urged China to cooperate with additional probes and said he will not rest until the world gets answers. In the US, now the Pfizer vaccine has been fully approved by the Food and Drug Administration against COVID-19. All serving members of the US military have been ordered to take it. Japan halted the use of over 1.5 million doses of the Moderna COVID jab, citing contamination issues. The world mourned Charlie Watts this week. The Rolling Stones drummer died in a London hospital at the age of 80. He had been battling ill health since last month when he announced he was pulling out of the band's tour later this year. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN. The health of the US labour market is expected to be the focus for Wall Street investors in the coming week. Traders are set to keep digesting recent comments from the Federal Reserve. From FSN's business desk in New York, Will Denzelo with the preview.
On Wednesday, private sector jobs figures for August are expected to be released. Thursday's when weekly jobless claims data is out, but Friday's monthly jobs report is set to be the most eagerly anticipated labour market news. In July, hiring picked up at its quickest rate in almost a year, with the US economy adding 943,000 jobs. The unemployment rate also ticked down to 5.4% versus the 5.7% analysts had expected. Investors this week will be hoping that momentum continues into August, and Wall Street will be eager to see whether surging COVID-19 cases have impacted hiring.
Delta Airlines said it will charge employees who aren't vaccinated against COVID-19 an extra $200 a month to cover some of the costs of their health insurance. From FSN's bureau in San Francisco, Ira Spitzer reports.
In a letter to staff, Delta's CEO laid out a series of new rules for the company's more than 50,000 U.S. employees. Beginning next month, unvaccinated employees will be subject to weekly testing, and those who still haven't gotten shots by November will have to pay an extra $200 a month to be part of the company's health insurance scheme. Delta says that surcharge will help cover hospital stays for employees sick with COVID-19, something that the airline says can cost it as much as $40,000. Earlier this month, United Airlines announced that it would require all of its U.S. employees to be vaccinated.
In the week ahead, our attention will be heavily focused on Afghanistan, the U.S. withdrawal from Kabul, and the plight of those Americans, foreign nationals, and Afghans Joe Biden is leaving behind. And that is the Week in Review from Feature Story News. Simon Marks reporting.
Researchers at Princeton University's Department of Sociology have made a major leap in our understanding of social interaction.
We conducted trials in 90 supermarkets across the country and found that essentially 100% of people disapproved of having a stranger hit them across the face and then expose their genitalia right in the middle of the supermarket, which we found very interesting.
Researchers observed similar reactions when the subject hurled shopping carts toward unsuspecting shoppers, stood in the deli section rubbing cold cuts against his chest, or got right near cashier's ears and began loudly singing Yankee Doodle.
In this particular trial, we had our subject, Kevin, take off his shirt, tape a banana to his forehead, and charge at various shoppers like he was a rhino. Within 20 minutes, store owners called the police and he was arrested, allowing us to come to the conclusion that this type of behavior is still considered at least somewhat taboo.
This is the Onion News Network. Free Talk Live.
It is Free Talk Live. You're welcome to join us. 603-283-6160. That's the number for you to do that. That's 603-283-6160. And with you tonight, it's Aria.
And Nikki.
And there's a new COVID variant. For those who aren't terrified enough of the Delta variant, the effects of which I have yet to see, but evidently they're pretty prominent. I don't know. Maybe I'm just not looking. I'm not in the ICUs, to be fair. So
I haven't seen it anywhere.
Neither have I, but this is the C.1.2 variant, which is how I would expect variants to be named. I want to know at what level a variant gets a letter of the Greek alphabet versus just being C.1.2 or whatever.
Not the doomsday variant.
Ooh, this might be it, actually. It was first detected in South Africa, and it is more mutated compared to the original virus than any other known variant. It is the most mutated variant so far. for whatever that's worth.
I know. What does that even mean? Most mutated.
It's
so most,
the
I
most
guess,
different from the original.
Yeah.
A new coronavirus variant has been detected in South Africa and a number of other countries, with concerns that it could be more infectious and evade vaccines. Of course.
Just like all of the other variants.
Right.
Like, aren't we already past this?
It is going to evade vaccines. I mean, that's almost a tautology by this point. According to a new preprint study by South Africa's, good Lord, I'm not reading all of that. The study is awaiting peer review. Scientists first detected it in May of 2021, finding that it was descended from C.1, which is why it's called C.1.2, presumably, which scientists found surprising as C.1 had last been detected in January. The new variant has, quote, mutated substantially compared to C.1 and is more mutations away from the original virus detected in Wuhan than any other variant of concern or variant of interest. These are acronyms, VOC and VOI are what those. So they have official acronyms for these: variant of concern and variant of interest. So
Oh my gosh.
is the Delta strain the D.1 then?
I couldn't even tell you. As far as I know, in the United States, they have still yet to be able to isolate COVID itself. So how they're detecting these different variants, I don't know if like Europe and South Africa have more advanced.
It would be surprising if they did.
Yeah,
But
so I don't. I have a hard time believing any of this at this point, just because everything they come out with is a contradiction. And
it is strange, man. I looked into the actual requirements of this festival that I'm going to next month, and the summary of it is, if you're vaccinated, you don't have to get tested before attending the festival, even though all of the science available shows that the vaccinated transmit COVID-19 just as much as anyone else. So it's basically a free pass to not get tested and to therefore not catch having COVID-19 and therefore spread it without limit.
It's crazy how many people don't actually know the science. Like even the science that the CDC is releasing, so many people don't know that it's been proven that vaccinated people can still get COVID. There's so many people that just have absolutely no clue about anything that's going on right now. Yeah, and they just believe whatever the news tells them or whatever their friends tell them, and they're not looking at the science or any sort of
I don't know what they're looking
data.
at, because we get all of our information from the news.
Yeah, from the mainstream
media.
news media, from the CDC. Most of the COVID stuff we talk about is from the CDC or the NIH or the WHO. You know,
we just pay attention when they speak, I guess.
I guess so.
So it was first detected in South Africa, but C.1.2 has been found in England, and it needs a catchier name. So I'm going to go with the Doomsday variant for the rest of this article. It's been found in England, China, Congo, New Zealand, Portugal, and Switzerland. The scientists believe that the number of available sequences of the Doomsday variant may be an underrepresentation of the spread and frequency of the variant in South Africa and around the world. I don't understand what that means. The number of available sequences may be an underrepresentation. I don't know.
I don't know what that means either.
The study found consistent increases in the number of Doomsday variant genomes in South Africa on a monthly basis, rising with some boring numbers, and I'm going to skip because they're boring numbers. The study also found that the Doomsday variant lineage has a mutation rate of about 41.8 mutations per year, which basically means this virus is mutating once a week, or really close to once a week, 41 times a year.
As coronaviruses are known to do.
Yes, which is nearly twice as fast as the current global mutation rate of the other variants. So even the Delta variant is mutating at a rate of roughly once every 2 weeks. And these people think they're going to come up with a vaccine against it? Are they insane? Or are the people who believe that they can come up with a vaccine against it insane?
They're all insane.
The scientists stated that this short period of increased evolution was seen with the alpha, beta, and gamma variants, suggesting that a single event followed by a spike in cases drove faster mutation rates. I don't understand that. More than half of the Doomsday sequences have 14 mutations, but additional mutations have been noticed in some of the sequences. So this variant mutates, and then it mutates other variants, and there are more variants and more mutations, and
so it's just a chain of mutation.
Yeah, which is exactly what we expected from a coronavirus.
Yeah.
So more than half of the mutations in the spike region have been previously seen in other variants of concern, and they use the acronyms here, and I had to remember what they were, and variants of interest, and it goes on here. Basically, a new variant, it's more contagious, it's more mutated, it's more deadly, and if you're not properly afraid yet, you need to get your 4th shot.
And that's the thing, too. So they're like, the vaccines don't work, but you should still get a vaccine just because we said so. And we also won't let you go to the grocery store if you don't get it. But mostly, we just want you to be very, very afraid. And we want you to blindly follow every single order we give you because you are so afraid.
Turkey has also detected a new coronavirus variant, with tests detecting mutations that weren't found in the current variants named by the World Health Organization, which means presumably they're dealing with an Epsilon variant. Dr. Kamli told Turkish media that while tests were conducted to detect the presence of variants around Turkey, doctors found a new one with no connection to the others. How could it have no connection to the others? That's not the way this works. Reaching a rate of about 50 to 60% of cases in a northern province. Kamli stressed that this is still unclear whether they have actually found a new variant or if it was just the result of false negativity in PCR tests. But the PCR test it can't identify specific variants, right? And no one's ever claimed it does.
No, it can't. And it also can't differentiate between coronavirus and the flu. So it just outright doesn't work. And that's why they're not using it after the end of this year.
I'm surprised they put it off that long. Unless they just want to keep flu numbers down for the first half of the season.
Nothing makes sense. I have no clue what the plan is with the PCR test. Because you would think that, okay, once the second the CDC was like, this doesn't work anymore, they should just stop using it. But we're still using it in hospitals. If you go to a CVS to get a COVID test, they're probably going to do a PCR test or some form of rapid test.
Yeah, the festival that I'm going to will accept a PCR test, even though, they've been proven to not be helpful at identifying COVID-19. Anyway, as of last Wednesday, the World Health Organization had identified 4 variants of concern and 4 variants of interest. So 8 more variants on the way. A number have been designated for further monitoring, which isn't a surprise. I mean, this was always going to happen. The strain that we dealt with in the first place was probably drastically different from the one that affected China.
Yeah, and I know India got a strain that seemed to be actually like a lot more deadly than what we were seeing in the United States.
Oh, so maybe that's our doomsday.
I do believe, this was a while ago too, but I do believe that there are different strains and that the level of like how sick you're going to get is variable based on which strain you get. But
certainly.
Either way, the vaccine isn't going to protect you from all of the strains. So what's the point?
Well, maybe Amazon having a clause that protects people from a zombie apocalypse or protects themselves from responsibility for a zombie apocalypse will prove useful. Maybe that's the next mutation. Coming up, more It's Free Talk Live.
When a lunar observatory detects a radio broadcast originating from Proxima Centauri, the nations of Earth discover their first contact with an alien race may also be their last. With the Proximans facing an extinction-level disaster, Earth must choose between sending a ship on a multi-year journey or allowing nature to take its course. Saving Proxima, a hard science fiction thriller by Travis S. Taylor and Les Johnson from BaneBooks.com.
Are you tired of governments murdering people around the world? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless, free market, non-political currency. Bitcoin cannot be inflated or controlled by any government. By using their money, you are helping the state. Stop doing it! You have an incredible alternative available now. Learn it, use it, spread it. Get started with Bitcoin at bitcoin.com. That's bitcoin.com.
Do you feel like your nation, state, or community no longer holds your values? Have you dreamt of a place where people agree that liberty is important and are free to pursue their projects so long as they respect the property of others? There are many people just like you that are discovering freeprivatecities.com. Their social media links are at the upper right of the page at freeprivatecities.com. All skill levels will be needed when the first of the Free Private Cities opens. It's sooner than you think. Stop arguing and build. freeprivatecities.com.
Breaking weather news. Belize is sunny and around 82 degrees every day this week.
What's the forecast for your life? If current politics and economic prospects are cramping your freedom, escape to the tropics. ECI Development has affordable second homes for you to own or rent in Belize and other tropical countries. Places with stable governments and growing economies. Secure your freedom now. To find out more, send an email to ftl@ecidevelopment.com.
The Free State Project has reached its goal of 20,000 liberty lovers who've pledged to move to New Hampshire and get active to achieve liberty in our lifetime. Perhaps you're trying to figure out what part of New Hampshire should be your destination. If so, consider Keene. You'll find more than 150 reasons to move to Keene at move.freekeene.com. Keene is famous for its historic, publicity-generating activism, as well as being the liberty media capital of the world. It's home to freekeene.com, New Hampshire's destination for liberty activism, news, and opinion. For years, we've been compiling over 150 reasons to move to Keene at move.freekeene.com, where you'll learn about some of what's happening here and what makes Keene a great place to live. If you love liberty, you'll probably enjoy anywhere you end up in the Shire. But do your due diligence first. Please visit move.freekeene.com for the full list of over 150 reasons to move to Keene. That's move.freekeene.com. What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191. So you've signed the Shire Society Declaration and are planning your move to New Hampshire to be around more liberty-oriented people. Next, sign up for the Shire Society Forum at forum.shiresociety.com. There are a bunch of people there who are already in the Shire, and they want to meet you. If you're already in the Shire physically, you should also come by the forums. Remember, not everyone uses Facebook. New people are signing up for the Shire Society Forum every month, so drop in and say hello at forum.shiresociety.com.
Do you appreciate what we do? Help us advertise, market, and promote for just $5 a month at amp.freetalklive.com.
It is Free Talk Live, and you're invited to join the discussions here. That's 603-283-6160 if you want to do that. 603-283-6160. And I want to tell you about Intercoin because last year we told you about it, and still it can help any business and organization launch their own currency or raise money using their own token, not someone else's. Now, Intercoin.org has launched worldwide, so if there's a token you want to launch or an app you want to build, go to intercoin.org, enter your email, and the team will get in touch with you and learn about your needs. And while you're there, if you want, get some Intercoins for yourself. That's intercoin.org, I-N-T-E-R, coin.org. And with you tonight, it's Arya and Nikki, and we've been talking about the coronavirus because that's all anyone ever talks about. I mean, it's so frustrating to go to Drudge Report and just see nothing but coronavirus headlines. It's like, oh, look, there's a hurricane up, but look, the Delta strain is more important, or this new strain in South Africa is more important than the hurricane. You would expect, I mean, in 2018, if there was a Category 4 hurricane that was hitting New Orleans, remember the last time a hurricane hit New Orleans head on, that would be the top story that everyone was talking about. Instead, I found like one article about it on Fox News.
Yeah.
Instead, it's all about this stupid coronavirus because for whatever reason, the mainstream media isn't sick of talking about it. And we get most of our talking points based on what's happening in the current day. And we get that from the mainstream media. So the Delta variant is here, and people want you to believe that this is a pandemic of the unvaccinated, and that the unvaccinated are the ones out there getting sick and spreading COVID-19. But look,
yeah, turns out that's not the case.
And it's clear it's not the case. I like pointing to the CDC. Now, I don't trust the CDC on this or any other matter, but it's interesting to go to the CDC's website and just look at what their actual recommendations are, because the media is not talking about it. Back in May or March or April or whatever point in this nonsense you want to look back to, every time the CDC had something to say, the mainstream media picked it up and talked about it. But now the media isn't talking about any of the CDC's guidelines, and that's ultimately because they all come out to be basically just, you don't have to get tested, which is stupid because...
And just tons of contradictions.
Yes, there are countless contradictions.
Nothing the CDC even makes sense anymore.
No. And that's assuming it ever made sense, but it certainly doesn't make sense now.
So it turns out a new study found that people vaccinated against the coronavirus who have also contracted the Delta variant of SARS-CoV-2 could have similar peak levels of the virus as people who have not had a vaccination.
So basically, the vaccine is not effective against the Delta variant.
Yes. So
which is what we would expect of the results to be when people started vaccinating during a pandemic. It would cause the rise of a strain that is resistant to the vaccine.
Exactly. And the way vaccines work is if you're going to do it on the original SARS-CoV-2 variant, or I guess it wouldn't be a variant yet, but if you're going to do it on the original SARS-CoV-2, the vaccine should only work against that strain. So
right, but they thought they had this solution. They thought they had a solution by targeting the spike proteins themselves or something.
Yes, but it turns out that isn't working. So the researchers also found that while the vaccination offers significant protection against the Delta variant, the vaccines are less effective than against previous variants. So that doesn't even make sense. So it offers significant protection, but the difference between being vaccinated and unvaccinated is insignificant. So
the media loves doing that. I mean, the talking heads of the CDC, the World Health Organization, they love doing that, saying, hey, look, your virus levels are the same among the vaccinated and unvaccinated, but that vaccine sure does a great job of protecting you.
It's just crazy to me because people are buying this. They hear, oh, well, if you get vaccinated, it'll help anyways. So they're like, oh, I better go get vaccinated. Everybody needs to get vaccinated. But then in the next sentence, they're like, it actually doesn't make a difference at all. But people just don't hear that. They just ignore those parts of it. It's
sad to me seeing the people on Twitter, the young, healthy people saying, you know, I had COVID and I'm vaccinated, so I wasn't hospitalized. And thank goodness for that vaccine. I'm like, dude, you weren't going to be hospitalized from this anyway.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, I've seen young, healthy people who got the vaccine and then people in their early 20s got the vaccine and ended up with inflammation of the heart, endocarditis, or massive blood clots in their arms and literally needed to get their arm amputated. That would not have happened if you just got COVID.
I know someone, he's a very young liberal. I'm not even sure he's old enough to go to a bar. He may be 22. I don't know. But he's a hardcore progressive liberal. Buys into the COVID fear constantly, always complaining about people not wearing their masks and all of that nonsense. Went to a festival, a convention a week or two ago, forgot his meds here, and I don't know what kind of meds they are, but came back and was like, oh my God, I'm so sick. So he got 2 COVID-19 tests and then went to the ER, whereupon they told him, oh yes, this is a result of you not taking the medicines that you had here. So this kid, the reason I learned about this is because he posted about it saying, thank goodness it's not COVID. Like, why were you even concerned about COVID in the first? You couldn't have been too concerned about it because you went to this convention, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But it's that sort of conflict between what people say and what they do that I see all the time. Like, this guy was one of the most fearful ones I've ever seen, and yet that didn't stop him from going to this convention in the height of the pandemic and the 4th wave or 3rd wave or whatever we're on.
Well, how many times have you seen people riding motorcycles without a helmet on, wearing a mask? I've probably seen that.
I haven't seen that yet.
I've seen that at least 10 times already.
That's
and it's
depressing.
Like, or people like buying cigarettes at the store with a mask on. I'm like, The science is settled on that. I mean, if we want to talk about the
science is going to get, yes. It does seem
if we
to be.
want to talk about the science being settled, cigarettes are definitely more harmful than coronavirus. And I think that's just...
Well, there was a study when this first started happening that suggested that being a tobacco smoker may actually provide you some level of immunity to COVID-19.
It could.
But I don't think it turned out to be true.
Maybe. I mean, who knows? I did know this man who they were doing some sort of underground excavation of a basement. And they had like some sort of, whatever, motorized heavy machinery underground, and the CO2 levels, or carbon monoxide or whatever, the carbon monoxide levels were building up because there was no ventilation for the air. And they said that his levels were so toxic that he would have died. But since he smoked a pack a day for like 30 years, he was so used to having, it must have been CO2, he was so used to having low levels of oxygen or, built up toxins in his blood that it actually saved his life.
Cigarettes do contain carbon monoxide.
Yeah, so maybe it was because that would make sense if it was like with the gas, but...
Oh, that's amazing. Cigarettes saved this dude's life.
Yep.
So they could kill him later.
Yep, exactly.
That was nice of them.
Spare him for a little bit. So going back to the article from Medical News Today, the researchers drew on the data... Well, we'll get back to it when we get back.
Absolutely. And also coming up, we're going to talk about nurses protesting in California and also the massive nurse shortage in California. Those two things may, in fact, be related. We're going to get into that and more. But you're invited to join us, 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. There's more coming up. It's Free Talk Live.
Carl Watner, longtime proponent of a voluntary society, died last December. You may have seen his articles published on his website, voluntarist.com, in his newsletter, The Voluntarist, the Mises Institute, or elsewhere over the last 40 years. His newest book, I Must Speak Out, Volume 2, The Best of the Voluntarist, is now available via Liberty Under Attack Publications. This 430-page second volume spans the years of 2000 through 2020 and includes articles by Carl Watner, Hans Hermann Hoppe, Carl Hess, Benjamin Tucker, George H. Smith, Lysander Spooner, Pete Eyre, Joyce Brand, and many others. I Must Speak Out is for the newly initiated, the veteran voluntarist, or anywhere in between. Buy the book now at libertyunderattack.com/voluntarist. For more great content on building a voluntary society and for Carl's extensive archives, check out voluntarist.com.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Simon Marks with the Week in Review. And the week ended with fresh anxieties about the situation in Afghanistan, where US forces plan to begin drawing down personnel and equipment ahead of their scheduled departure from Kabul airport on Tuesday. Thursday's terror attack is known to have taken the lives of at least 13 US troops, 2 British nationals, and almost 200 Afghans. A suicide bomber and other ISIS-K terrorists reducing the Abbey Gate of the airport to a scene of mass murder.
There was an explosion that happened inside the crowd. A lot of people got hurt. I think some of the Americans, they got hurt too.
At the White House on Thursday night, President Biden.
These American service members who gave their lives, it's an overused word, but it's totally appropriate here, were heroes. Heroes who've been engaged in a dangerous, selfless mission to save the lives of others.
On Friday, he was told by his national security team further terror strikes are likely. The US has evacuated more than 100,000 people in the last 2 weeks, but some Americans, other foreign nationals, and countless thousand Afghans will be left behind. Britain, Canada, France, and Germany abandoned their evacuation efforts by the end of the week. In London, Prime Minister Boris Johnson.
There will sadly be people who haven't got through, people who might qualify. The Taliban authorities, the new government, however it's composed, have got to understand safe passage for those is absolutely paramount.
And President Biden says he's also hoping the Taliban will cooperate with those efforts. Late on Friday, an unclassified version of Origins of COVID-19 was published. FSN's Rachel Silverman has more.
After examining all available information, 18 U.S. intelligence agencies say they have narrowed down 2 plausible hypotheses on the origin of COVID-19, either natural exposure to an infected animal or a laboratory-associated incident. But the intelligence agencies say they won't be able to make a more definitive conclusion without more information.
President Biden urged China to cooperate with additional probes and said he will not rest until the world gets answers. In the US, now the Pfizer vaccine has been fully approved by the Food and Drug Administration against COVID-19. All serving members of the US military have been ordered to take it. Japan halted the use of over 1.5 million doses of the Moderna COVID jab, citing contamination issues. The world mourned Charlie Watts this week. The Rolling Stones drummer died in a London hospital at the age of 80. He had been battling ill health since last month when he announced he was pulling out of the band's tour later this year. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
Our Matrix server is about as free as internet chat can be. Join the existing rooms or create your own at chat.freetalklive.com.
It is Free Talk Live. As always, you're invited to join us and talk about whatever is important to you. That's 603-283-6160. That's the call-in line if you want to do that. That's 603-283-6160. And I want to tell you about Bitcoin.com. It is the best place to go to learn about cryptocurrency. Just go there, click Getting Started at the top of the page, and take a couple minutes out of your day to learn about this important world-changing information. But if you already know about cryptocurrency, then check out news.bitcoin.com to stay up to date on all of the news and headlines that's relevant to you. Bitcoin.com is your source for everything crypto related, including getting a wallet, mining, or just learning or even acquiring Bitcoin. Check it out. Bitcoin.com is the website for that. Again, Bitcoin.com. Let's go to the phones. We have Michael calling from Connecticut. Michael, you're on Free Talk Live.
Good evening.
Hey, what's on your mind?
I wanted to bring up the topic of the vaccine mandates because it affected one of my 2 jobs. I do housekeeping in a kind of a dementia care ward, kind of a high functioning dementia care, and effective this Friday will be my last day because Ned Lamont did an executive order mandating the anybody in assisted care or anything like nursing homes or in that category had to get the first dose of what I call the death jab. And so, yeah.
Now, are they not allowing for the?
Lost one of my,
are they not allowing for the possibility of the Johnson & Johnson, which is just one jab?
Well, I think the criteria is the first dose. I guess that also you can get that too. But I just won't take it. So
yeah, I don't blame you.
I'll lose one of my 2. Yeah, so I'm just going to lose one of my 2 jobs. Which
so they actually fired you over this?
I'm sorry?
They actually fired you over this?
No. Well, technically, I gave my notice 25 days in advance because this was done about almost a month ago. So I'm choosing to leave.
Okay.
So, but eventually you will get. They'll put you on unpaid leave, and eventually you will get terminated. So,
because
I have another job anyway to fall back on. But you're mentioning about talking about all the nursing shortages, and I think my experience is probably a microcosm of what's going to happen throughout the entire healthcare system and nursing homes and assisted living, hospitals, and all that.
Absolutely.
Are nursing homes? You have a question, or?
Well, I'm kind of curious to see how many people are going to try to apply for religious exemptions, medical exemptions, or just kind of try to, not quit, but just kind of see what happens. Because it seems like about 20% of healthcare workers, roughly from the data that I'm seeing now, it says, I guess 75 to 80% of healthcare workers in the United States are already fully vaccinated. So I'm curious to see, if the 20% is really absolutely not going to get vaccinated, we're already in a shortage, like you said, so that's going to create a huge gap of caretakers.
Yeah, a lot of my some of my coworkers did go the exemption route. I mean, I personally am not going to jump through hoops because I already have another job, so I can rely on that and then work on finding a second job later. And this whole thing is just one more thing which will probably push me to move into New Hampshire, which I wanted to do a long time ago, but COVID now has kind of reinvigorated that.
Well, the government here in New Hampshire is not allowed to require vaccines or to mandate them, which means that the schools aren't allowed to either, much to the dismay of Keene State College that wanted a vaccine requirement, but then was like, oh no, we can't do that because it's actually illegal in the state of New Hampshire. And the result is that I forgot what I got distracted. But yeah, so basically, New Hampshire has a law that prohibits the state from doing that, and therefore schools and stuff like that. But it does not prevent private companies from doing that. So it's not a foolproof solution. But Michael, you definitely should move to New Hampshire because that is progress, and it's more than you've seen in Connecticut and Rhode Island, which have been some of the worst in regards to COVID-19.
It's a lot better here than it is in a lot of places.
It is. It's still not perfect here. I'm surprised to find that these executive orders are ongoing, that by decree they've decided we're more than a year into this of these governors having emergency powers to basically do whatever they want.
Almost 2 years.
And no one seems to be really doing anything about that. I know the New Hampshire state legislature, that they attempted to, but it was kind of weakened and muddled down, and then it got even further muddled down in a committee or some such nonsense. But there are nurses protesting, and the reason they're protesting is because they don't want to be forced to get a shot. And I can totally sympathize. I have to think that the 20% of healthcare workers who aren't vaccinated against coronavirus are doing so out of some sort of reason. It's not just they can't possibly not know where to get a vaccine or any of that kind of nonsense like the media tries to put out there. They know. They just, for whatever reason, have chosen they don't want one.
And that's their right.
It is.
No matter what the reason is, that's their right. So.
But there is a nurse shortage, and there's a doctor shortage, presumably as a result of all of this. And you have stories related to those.
I do. So nurse shortages in California are reaching crisis points.
Now, what happened? Now, is COVID-19 revealing a long-standing flaw in the system?
So there's a lot of different reasons why we're seeing nurse shortages. It's not just that people are quitting because they don't want to get vaccinated. There's a lot of different reasons here. The past almost 2 years working in healthcare has been extremely difficult.
I can imagine. I mean, it wasn't pleasant before. We were always hearing about doctor shortages and things like that, and the standard ER wait time was something like 4 to 6 hours.
Yeah.
So it's never been good.
So in the beginning, a lot of people, there was just like so much fear out there on the news. There was so much uncertainty. So a lot of people were just, I don't want to risk it. I don't want to put my family at risk. So a lot of people just quit. They could collect unemployment. They were like, why would I work and put my family at risk, put myself at risk when I could just collect unemployment? So
on that note, isn't it interesting that all of these vaccine mandates happen to appear at a time when the unemployment benefits are going away?
Yeah. Yeah. So they're almost trying to force people to. And it's really messed up because the people who are working in healthcare right now are the people who didn't give up on their careers. They didn't give up on patients, no matter the uncertainty, no matter the, impending doom and danger.
Right, because at first we legitimately didn't know anything about this, and there were videos surfacing that may have been faked or may have been, who knows what was going on with them.
It was
people
real
just
scary.
Falling over on the streets in China dead.
There were days that I went into work and I was just like not sure what to expect. It was really, really scary at first. So now it seems like the people who hung in there and really, really care about their patients enough to, possibly put themselves at risk, now they're going to get fired because they have questions about this vaccine. It really doesn't seem fair, and it doesn't seem safe because we already have a nursing shortage, and now it's just going to get so much worse. So I have a story about this from California. In the past month, 4 emergency room nurses, exhausted by the onslaught of patients and emotional turmoil, by COVID-19 have quit at the Eureka Hospital where Matt Mill works. Mill, who has been a trauma nurse for 4 years, is actively looking for a less stressful nursing position.
Well, hold on. If you have COVID-19, there's no set of circumstances where you enter the trauma ward, right?
No, it's completely... So, like, trauma would be like car accidents, motorcycle accidents.
So her quitting had absolutely nothing to do with COVID-19.
No, well... So it's kind of complicated, right? So sometimes I remember at the hospital that I'm at, when COVID was at its peak, our COVID unit was basically what used to be med-surg was now COVID. So all those med-surg patients were overflowing into different units. So it put an increased stress on the hospital.
Okay, makes sense.
So
there's more about
factors.
this ridiculous nurse shortage how it's being made worse by, causing nurses to quit because you're requiring things of them that they don't want to submit to. It's Free Talk Live.
This is Michael Dean from the Freedom Fiends. I've run websites since 1996 and have used over a dozen web hosts in that time. AgristHosting.com is the only one that hasn't broken my heart. Agrist Hosting's uptime and service is stellar, and their DDoS mitigation is the best I've seen. That's important because if you tell the truth in this world, you'll ruffle feathers. And some people will try dirty tricks to silence your voice. No matter what the haters hit us with, Agrist Hosting keeps our websites online. If you have a mission-critical commercial presence or a world-changing activism site, you cannot tolerate any skullduggery. So go with AgristHosting.com. Have a WordPress or blog site, but you're not satisfied with performance or uptime? Or just want raw hosting? Want to pay with Bitcoin? Agrist Hosting specializes in high-performance hosting with personalized service. Go to agristhosting.com and click on the button that says Get Hosted. That's agristhosting.com.
The new 4th edition of Healing Our World, The Compassion of Libertarianism, will take your understanding of liberty to a deeper level and has over 1,300 updated references, new cartoons, and a foreword by Dr. Ron Paul. With discounts for multiple book purchases, the 4th edition of Healing Our World is a great gift for the liberals, pragmatists, environmentalists, and Christians in your life who think libertarianism is cold-hearted. Get yours today at healing.freetalklive.com and use promo code FTL for a $5 discount. Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. Chat.lrn.fm.
We have some good news. The indictments against Ross Ulbricht in the District of Maryland were dismissed with prejudice, meaning they can never be refiled. This is especially good because those indictments contain the only charge ever made that Ross engaged in murder for hire. This was a serious allegation that Ross Ulbricht denies. It was never prosecuted or ruled on by a jury, but was trumpeted by the federal government and the media as if it were proven fact. The Maryland court held these indictments for almost 5 years, poisoning Ross's case and leaving him under a cloud of unproven allegations. As explained in Ross's appeal to the Supreme Court, the fact that the judge used these allegations to give Ross a draconian sentence of double life without parole violated his Sixth Amendment right to a jury trial. Judges are required to issue sentences based on convictions decided by a jury, not unproven allegations never even charged at trial. Although this is a positive development, the dropped indictment will not set Ross free. Now, a presidential pardon is Ross's only hope of freedom. Sign the petition at freeross.org. freeross.org.
Some of you asked, and now we've delivered. LRN.FM's live Keene, New Hampshire studio shows are now streamed in HD on Twitch. Visit our channel at twitch.lrn.fm and give it a follow. If you have Amazon Prime, you get 1 free subscription on Twitch. If you use it on our channel, Twitch will give LRN.FM a monthly piece of your Prime subscription cost. So please watch, follow, share, and subscribe to twitch.lrn.fm. That's twitch.lrn.fm. Are you a cryptocurrency advocate? The Crypto Tip is the ideal outreach tool to help new people discover cryptocurrency. It's a printable business card-sized tip that you can give to service providers, preferably in addition to a good cash tip. When the server scans the QR code, it'll bring up an explanation of cryptocurrency, how to install a wallet, and allow them to claim the tip. If they don't claim the crypto, you get your tip refunded to you after a time period you specify. Plus, if they do claim the tip, you get an email alert. Create as many tips as you want at cryptotip.org. That's cryptotip.org.
You can stick it to the man and big tech. Join our FTL social mastodon at social.freetalklive.com.
It is Free Talk Live, Arya and Nikki tonight, and you can join us. 603-283-6160, 603-283-6160. And it's been brought to my attention that the Johnson & Johnson is no longer a one-shot coronavirus vaccine, and that's worth getting into, particularly because some of the just extravagant claims being made here. And you got to remember, this is coming primarily, if not entirely, from Johnson & Johnson themselves, basically saying, hey, we want the government to pay to give people a second dose of a vaccine, a booster shot. And I don't think a lot of people realize how much wealth is being shifted into big pharma as a result of all this. That vaccine is free to you. Those tests are free to you, but the government's paying for them.
It's crazy that people have that disconnect. They're like, no, it's free. I'm like, yeah, but like the taxpayer's paying for it. Yeah, but that's like, whatever, we're already paying taxes. And I'm like, I don't think you understand how economics works and how taxes work. I don't.
Anyone holding USD is paying for this nonsense.
Yeah, and it's just making the currency worth less and less and less.
So. It is, and it's making Big Pharma very, very wealthy. I think Pfizer said they were up 25%.
Oh my gosh.
25% above what they had projected to be at. So they're doing well, and I imagine Moderna and Johnson & Johnson are doing pretty well too.
And the best part is, they also are selling the remedies for any sort of vaccine reaction or vaccine injury that you have. So even if, you get a vaccine injury, oh no, that's fine. They're going to get even more money for that.
Well, luckily for Johnson & Johnson, the government's probably going to approve this nonsense, which means the government will give them more money, which hopefully will help them pay off some of the massive lawsuits that they've lost for doing shady things with medicine. So booster doses of Johnson & Johnson's one-shot coronavirus vaccines generated a large increase in antibodies, the frontline immune system defenses against infection, the company reported Wednesday. Now, this is Johnson & Johnson reporting this. You got to keep that in mind. They're saying, hey, look, our vaccine is great. Government, buy it from us. Oh, but look, if you buy it a second time, it's even better. The data comes, people who received a booster 6 to 8 months after their initial Johnson & Johnson shots saw antibodies increase 9-fold higher than 20 days after the first shot, Johnson & Johnson said. So it's 9 times more effective than it was initially. So they made it super effective. Just buy it from us, government. Give it to the people. Now, people started mixing and matching vaccines, so I have to wonder, would the Johnson & Johnson vaccine be a booster for the Moderna and Pfizer's as well?
It's a terrible idea. You're not supposed to do that.
I know, but people are doing it. There are hospitals doing it.
People, stop doing that.
I wish they would listen. The data comes from 2 phase 2 studies conducted in the United States and Europe. Some of the 2,000 or so people in the studies got booster doses 6 months after their first doses. And new interim data from these studies demonstrate that a booster dose 6 months later, you need a booster dose of the Johnson & Johnson COVID-19 vaccine, generated a rapid and robust increase in spike-binding antibodies. At least they didn't say spike in binding antibodies, because CNN did, and I filtered it out earlier because it was a stupid thing to say. We have established that a single shot of our COVID-19 vaccine generates strong and robust immune responses that are durable and persistent through 8 months. I don't know that that's true.
You know what I just thought of? You know how people are arguing that these vaccinations have been appropriately tested? If they were appropriately tested, wouldn't they have already known how many doses that you would have needed to get full immunity to COVID-19, right? So the fact that they are just, nope, one more booster dose might do it. Maybe just one more.
Well, the fact that these things wane after 6 to 8 months, right, and are reduced in effectiveness over time, it certainly suggests that they were not tested for a period that could have encompassed 6 to 8 months, or they would have realized this out the gate.
Well, it's impossible, right? Because it came out like 6 months after we found out about COVID. So it is impossible for them to do a long-term study on this. So there's no way that they could have known. But people are still trying to argue, nope, it's been through, our independent fact checkers have said that it has been through various tests and that it's reliable and that it'll save you from COVID, this, that, and the other thing. And it's like, how? It's impossible.
Yep, and it's important to remember that none of these vaccines were tested enough for them to know that 6 to 8 months afterward, you would have very, very diminished immunity to COVID-19, if any. So, distressing, depressing nonsense from Johnson & Johnson. I'm not surprised. I mean, they're big pharma, so they want more money, and the government will gladly give it to them if it means injecting. This, it's not as bad as I expected. 6 to 8 months for your booster. I expected monthly boosters.
Oh my gosh, that would be crazy.
At minimum every 2 months. So the fact that they're not going that extravagant is actually kind of surprising to me. I mean, think about how fast this thing's mutating.
Imagine that too. Like, I bet a lot of these people that are getting this vaccine don't do their yearly checkup, right? Most of these people probably aren't getting a yearly physical. So if they can't even get to the doctors once a year, how are you going to get these people to get to the doctors or to CVS or wherever every 6 months or every 4 months? It just doesn't seem likely.
Excellent point. And that's assuming there's going to be nurses and doctors to provide those shots in the first place.
I know, because if they're not quitting because they're sick of the vaccine mandates and the mask mandates, they're quitting just because it's really, really hard to work in healthcare right now. It has not been an easy couple of years for us.
Well, let's get back into that because I think it's worth talking about.
So this article is about nurses in California. This one man, Matt Mill, who has been a nurse, a trauma nurse for 4 years, he says that he's looking for a less stressful nursing position and that a lot of his colleagues are too. On the bad days...
What do they expect working in a hospital? I mean, in a trauma ward to be not stressful?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean...
That sounds like one of the more stressful places one could work in a hospital.
And there's the thing about nursing is it's a wide range of things you can do. Nowadays, there's a lot of telehealth positions. So you're kind of like working from home, doctor's office positions. There are a lot of different things you can do, but one would think that being a trauma nurse probably isn't super, that sounds like a very stressful position. Well, you would think they would anticipate that going into that field, but...
It's also possible they didn't really want to be in the trauma field. They just ended up there because of the shortage. I was like, hey, well, we have to have a nurse here.
Well, and being a new nurse, you kind of just get whatever position you can get. But
Makes sense. Unfortunate, but that is the way it works.
And sometimes you think you can handle it, and then you get into the position, and you're like, this is, I didn't expect to go home every day crying. And it's like, it is tough. It's hard.
I would not want to work in a trauma ward.
No, I can't even imagine. So Mill goes on to say, on the bad days, I think, what am I doing? And is this what I want to be doing? Mill said. It's shifting me to my core. Around California and around the nation, nurses are trading in high-pressure jobs for a career change, early retirement, or less demanding assignments, leading to staffing shortages in many hospitals. Hospitals are struggling to comply with the state's nursing staffing requirements as pandemic-induced burnout has exacerbated an already chronic nursing shortage nationwide.
So there was already a shortage, and now it's just getting worse.
Yeah, I think before COVID, there was probably a shortage just because it's a really demanding field. It's a very challenging field to work in. It's very sad. It's very exhausting mentally, emotionally, and physically. A lot of hospitals, you have to work 12-hour shifts. And then with the shortages, sometimes you're even mandated legally to stay longer. And if you do leave, you can be tried legally because that's patient abandonment. So you come into
So they
work.
weaponize the state to force you to work.
Yep. So you come into work expecting to work a 8-hour shift, and then you get mandated to stay. That shift just turned into a 16-hour shift. And that is just not safe.
No, it's
not safe at all. And nurses are having 6-8 patient assignments, which is not safe. And it's not safe for the nurses, and it's not safe for the patients. And that's why, the state created these
requirements that, it's illegal for you to not come to work, because otherwise people wouldn't come to work because no one wants to deal with that.
But the thing is, if you need, say, for example, if you need 10 nurses to work on a unit to meet their requirements, but you don't have 10 nurses, what are you going to do?
There's nothing you can do.
There's nothing you can do. It's crazy. So hospitals say that they are reaching a crisis point, straining under the dual forces of more people seeking routine care and surging COVID-19 hospitalizations driven by the Delta variant.
More about this shortage. I never even considered the fact that they would weaponize, nurses not coming to work as patient abandonment and then bring you up on criminal charges.
Yeah, you can't leave.
That's absolutely insane.
Yep.
603-283-6160.
If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com.
Brute force, intransigent defiance, adamantine will. These are the hallmarks of the AI tank. These gigantic machines have the firepower of an army, but they also have their own sense of honor and duty. When the world breakers arrive, battle will be joined, planets will shake, and war and peace will never be the same again. World Breakers. Stories from David Weber, Larry Correia, and more. Available August 3rd from BaneBooks.com.
My name is Jacob Hornberger. I'm president of the Future of Freedom Foundation, which Congressman Ron Paul awarded for having an outstanding freedom website. Write us at fff@fff.org, and we'll send you a free 3-month subscription to our monthly journal of libertarian essays and our booklet, Economic Liberty in the Constitution, which George Mason University economics professor Walter Williams praised in a recent column. That's fff@fff.org.
The LRN.FM social media channels have been revamped. We've eliminated Facebook and focused on other platforms like Twitter and Mastodon, the decentralized alternative to Twitter. On our accounts, you'll find posts from multiple LRN.FM show hosts together in one place. Follow us on Twitter at twitter.lrn.fm, or better yet, move to the decentralized Mastodon social media platform at toot.lrn.fm, toot.lrn.fm. I think you'll like it.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 2 is next, after the news, here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Jagruti Dave. US officials say they've conducted a drone strike in Kabul in Afghanistan on a car filled with explosives. US Central Command spokesperson Captain Bill Urban said they'd eliminated an imminent ISIS-K threat to Hamid Karzai International Airport. Earlier, the State Department had warned of another specific credible threat and urged US citizens near Kabul Airport to leave the area. This was the second US strike on an ISIS target since last Thursday's airport bombing, which killed scores of Afghans and 13 US service members. On Sunday, President Joe Biden went to Dover Air Force Base in Delaware to honour those American personnel killed in Kabul as their remains were brought back to the United States, known as a dignified transfer. Amid the tragedy of lives lost, the US is continuing with its evacuation from Afghanistan until August the 31st. Speaking to NBC's Meet the Press, US Secretary of State Anthony Blinken admitted it was unlikely the US would have a diplomatic presence in the country after that date.
First, in terms of having an on-the-ground diplomatic presence on September 1st, that's not likely to happen. But what is going to happen is that our commitment to continue to help people leave Afghanistan who want to leave and who are not out by September 1st, that endures. There's no deadline on that effort.
Republicans have continued their attacks against President Biden and his team for what they're characterizing as a bungled troop withdrawal. One of those is Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell, who was speaking on Fox News Sunday.
After we left Saigon, there weren't Vietnamese terrorists who were planning on attacking us here at home.
US President Joe Biden visited the Federal Emergency Management Agency headquarters for an update on Hurricane Ida, which has made landfall in Louisiana. With winds of around 150 miles per hour, it's expected to be one of the strongest storms to hit the area and comes on the 16th anniversary of Hurricane Katrina, which devastated New Orleans. President Biden urged people in the path of the Category 4 storm to heed the advice of local authorities.
Everyone should listen to the instructions from local and state officials just how dangerous this is and take it seriously.
Hundreds of thousands of people in Louisiana are without power. The state's governor, John Bell Edwards, told people to be prepared.
It is a good idea to have a mattress nearby that you can use to put over yourself and other family members to protect you from any falling debris.
As residents brace themselves, there are also concerns for Louisiana's health system, which is bearing the brunt of one of the country's worst coronavirus outbreaks. 7-time Emmy Award-winning actor Ed Asner has died at the age of 91. His family confirmed the news on the actor's Twitter account, writing, "We are sorry to say that our beloved patriarch passed away this morning peacefully. Words cannot express the sadness we feel." Ed Asner was best known for his role as Lou Grant in the 1970s US sitcom The Mary Tyler Moore Show and his eponymous spin-off series. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks, remembering today the Hollywood legend Ed Asner, who died on Sunday at the age of 91. He was in the 1980s not only one of the top stars on American television, but he was also the head of the Screen Actors Guild, the acting union in America, and after that, very active on the left of the US political spectrum. It is as the curmudgeonly newsman Lou Grant that he will be best remembered, a role that started out as a central figure in the much-beloved Mary Tyler Moore comedy show, but then transitioned to a spin-off, a serious drama called Lou Grant, about the role of the press in American democracy.
Nobody knew the unbelievable sea change between doing a 3-camera live comedy to a 1-camera filmed drama. I was constantly told by the 2 producers, now we're not going to be down on the set with you, so you got to remember who Lou is. You got to keep that spirit of Lou. Well, I kept trying to keep that spirit of Lou with no laughs because it's a filmed drama.
Ed Asner talking to the Freedom Forum. It was a brilliant filmed drama that would eventually continue for 114 episodes. He was 40 when he found fame. He was still working into his 80s, lending his voice to the elderly widower in the animated comedy Up. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks.
The main headlines again. US officials say they've conducted a drone strike in Kabul in Afghanistan on a car filled with explosives. Hurricane Ida has made landfall in Louisiana with winds of around 150 miles per hour. It's expected to be one of the strongest storms to hit the area. And 7-time Emmy Award-winning actor Ed Asner has died at the age of 91. That's the latest from Feature Story News. I'm Jagruti Dave.
Sea anemones are the most disgusting of all tidal creatures. Their thick tentacle arms are engorged with the collected urine that makes up much of tide pools. Whale urine, fish urine, otter urine, crab urine, all sucked up by the moon and deposited in these natural outhouses. Clownfish share a symbiotic relationship with sea anemones. The clownfish cleans the sea anemone. In exchange, the anemone sprays urine on the face of the clownfish. It's one fetishistic delight. Contrary to popular belief, sea urchins are not in fact animals. Indeed, they are not alive at all. They are simply the clumped-together leavings of the ocean's denizens.
This is the Onion News Network. Free Talk Live.
It is Free Talk Live. You can weigh in 603-283-6160 if you want to do that. That's 603-283-6160. And with you tonight, it's Aria.
And Nikki.
And we're talking about the nurse shortage here. And I have a story that it kind of suggests why they may be quitting, sort of. They talk about the horror medics, that nurses and etc. reveal the horror of, quote, talking dead COVID patients who are awake but can't survive without machines due to damage. Now, COVID-19 or not, Nikki, you started talking about this previously. You're around people all the time who you know are going to die. Your job is to watch people die, basically.
Yeah, a lot of the times, yeah.
And there's no way to do that without, one, being traumatized, and two, turning to just outright callousness as a way of dealing with that trauma. Yeah. And that's sort of what they've done here. The talking dead is what they're calling coronavirus patients who are awake but can't survive. The situation has become so dire in one Florida hospital that staff are now referring to COVID-19 patients who are hooked up to breathing machines as the talking dead, presumably a play on Walking Dead. Tallahassee Memorial Hospital is experiencing the most COVID patients in a very long time, one CNN report recounted. Well, that's very scientific. It's not like the hospital would have numbers that would allow you to track these things and pinpoint dates.
Just take CNN's word for it.
Yeah, it's been a very long time. In January, Memorial had 41 COVID patients. That's now at 135, most of which are unvaccinated. I don't know to what extent that is true or untrue, or what most even means. Most could mean 51%.
Yeah, I would also be curious to know the vaccination rate in Florida.
Also a good question. I don't have the answers to those. One CNN reporter who visited the hospital said the situation was, quote, heartbreaking, and that nurses were struggling to get patients off oxygen. Those are patients who are still awake right now, said the CNN guy, who are still conscious. So they are still having these very difficult conversations with their doctors and nurses and facing that very tough reality that if that life-sustaining equipment that's breathing for them is removed, they could be dead in a matter of minutes.
So 52% of the population in Florida is vaccinated, by the way.
Okay. That's lower. Actually, I guess that's higher than I would have expected. I think for Florida, I probably would have guessed like 40%.
Lower than it is up here.
Yep.
I think, I don't know exactly what it is.
I think it's 70% have had at least their first shot here in New Hampshire. But I mean, they're not tracking this stuff very well. And it's just amazing to me. I was thinking about this last night. It's not just about filtering large amounts of money into big pharma.
59%.
Is that fully vaccinated?
Yep.
In New Hampshire? It's not just about filtering large amounts of money to big pharma, although that certainly happens. It's because they have no way of tracking who has and has not had COVID-19 and is therefore, more immune to it than people who have been vaccinated, at least according to one study out of Israel. So, but even then, they're not tracking the vaccination stuff with any level of actual sincerity. If they wanted to, they could have a national database of everyone who had been I don't want them to. But if they were serious about tracking this because it was a big deal, they could do this in ways that didn't rely on you keeping a personal record of a basically little card that you carry around and can lose, or take a photograph of, or scan it in, or make a photocopy of. All of these are legitimate ways of proving to someone that you've been vaccinated against COVID-19, is showing them a picture of your COVID-19 vaccination card that you took on your phone. That is sufficient to prove you're vaccinated in the modern United States. And that's insane if this thing was as serious as, they've been making it out to be. So Ryan Smith, Memorial's top clinical officer, doubled up as a nurse to get a sense of what was happening on his hospital's COVID ward. The first part of my shift, I had my first few patients look at me and say, "Don't let me die," Smith said. As soon as you remove them from the devices, they no longer made it. To watch how quickly they dwindle down is the hardest thing for me. Now, isn't this why they've recommended not to put people on ventilators in the first place? Isn't that like an option of last resort?
Yep, absolutely. And I mean, I'm not sure if these people really needed to be on ventilators. I mean, I'm not there, so it's really hard to tell, but...
Don't they get money when they put patients under ventilators?
Yeah, I think they were getting something like $15,000 for every COVID death. For every death that was labeled a COVID death and I think they were getting $10,000 for every patient that was put on a ventilator. That was at least in New York City. I'm not sure if that was a nationwide thing. I'm assuming it is.
Yeah, it's very distressing. The Talking Dead didn't make sense to me until I saw it firsthand, is how quickly they decompensate when they don't have that oxygen. The rest of the world can't see what goes on behind these doors. We want COVID to go away, but the reality is that it is here. It's real. It impacts a lot more people than it should. And I would have a hard time dealing with that. But whatever the disease was, I would have a difficult time dealing with that. So I can't imagine how healthcare workers, how this shortage of healthcare workers is going to get any better. But it's certainly not going to get better with employers, that is the hospitals and so on, demanding their nurses do things that they don't want to do. They're already forcing you to work doubles even if you don't, maybe you have something you need to do. Doesn't matter if you leave your shift, and this is leaving your shift at your scheduled time.
Yeah.
It's considered patient abandonment and it's criminal. You can be brought up on criminal charges for being a nurse who refuses to work a double.
Yeah.
That's insane. So when you add into that these people have been working throughout this entire pandemic, they were essential workers a year ago. They were heroes a year and a half ago. Now they're being told, get the jab or get out.
Yeah, now I'm a scumbag and I don't care about my patients for not wanting to get vaccinated. And there is scientific evidence that the vaccine does not prevent you from getting or spreading COVID-19. So
there is no evidence, as far as I can tell, to suggest that it does either of those things.
And also on the CDC website, it says as clear as day that this vaccination has not been tested on pregnant women or women of reproductive age. I want to have kids. So I am not risking not being able to have kids just because someone thinks that I should get this vaccine that has not been appropriately tested. If people want to get it, power to them. That's your choice. If that makes you feel better, that if you think it works, if you would like to take that gamble, that's your right. But for people to try to force everybody else, I mean, come on.
And let's keep in mind that, they didn't know that 6 months after receiving these vaccines, the effects would wane and they would not be as effective. They didn't know what the results would be 6 months after giving someone one of these vaccines. They don't know what the results will be after getting 2 of these vaccines or 6 months after getting a booster shot.
Well, and think about this too. So there were a lot of people who, after they got their second dose, started experiencing blood clots and other vaccine injuries.
Which makes perfect sense when you realize what the vaccines are supposed to do.
Exactly. So what's going to happen after the third dose? What if there has to be a fourth dose? If we're just going to keep injecting ourselves with this genetic gene therapy...
Because it's programming your cells to produce the spike protein.
Yeah.
Which your white blood cells will then recognize as foreign and then attack. And in theory, the next time they saw those spike proteins, it would be COVID-19 and they would know what to do. However, 6 to 8 months later, it doesn't appear to continue working very well. And studies suggest that it doesn't work very well against the Delta variant, much less the variants that are continually evolving out there. We mentioned in the early part of the show the latest one in South Africa, which turned out to be like 20 different ones in South Africa. And the ones in Indonesia, the one in India, it's a coronavirus. It's constantly evolving.
And you know what the best thing we can all do is just try to be, if people are really this concerned about getting sick, getting COVID, and getting other people sick, the best thing you can do is to boost your immune system. And I've been telling people this whole time, eat healthy, incorporate more whole foods into your diet, eat more citrus, take supplements, take vitamin D, exercise, go outside, get fresh air. This is what we can do to protect ourselves and our loved ones.
That's certainly the best way. I remember when sanitizer first got really popular, it was revealed after a number of years. Oh yeah, you people you're doing this too much. You're killing your own immune systems with all of this hand sanitizer nonsense. And of course, with COVID-19, the hand sanitizer just became more prominent.
Yep.
603-283-6160. There's more coming up. It's Free Talk Live.
Are you tired of governments murdering people around the world? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless, free market, non-political currency. Bitcoin cannot be inflated or controlled by any government. By using their money, you are helping the state. You have an incredible alternative available now. Learn it, use it, spread it. Get started with Bitcoin at Bitcoin.com. That's Bitcoin.com.
Do you feel like your nation, state, or community no longer holds your values? Have you dreamt of a place where people agree that liberty is important and are free to pursue their projects so long as they respect the property of others? There are many people just like you that are discovering freeprivatecities.com. Their social media links are at the upper right of the page at freeprivatecities.com. All skill levels will be needed when the first of the Free Private Cities opens. It's sooner than you think. Stop arguing and build. freeprivatecities.com.
Breaking weather news. Belize is sunny and around 82 degrees every day this week.
What's the forecast for your life? If current politics and economic prospects are cramping your freedom, escape to the tropics. ECI Development has affordable second homes for you to own or rent in Belize and other tropical countries. Places with stable governments and growing economies. Secure your freedom now. To find out more, send an email to ftl@ecidevelopment.com.
There are lots of ways to listen to Free Talk Live. Our podcast has been around since podcasts began, and now the FTL feed is loaded with content besides our full show archives. Did you know that we make it easy for you to customize your podcast subscriptions? We have different feeds, one that includes only our full shows, one with just the Daily Digest, and our main feed that includes everything. You decide what you listen to. It's quick and easy to customize your feeds at feeds.freetalklive.com. That's feeds.freetalklive.com.
On March 16th this year, government task forces violently raided the New Hampshire Bitcoin Embassy, the Mighty Moose Mart, the homes of Aria DiMezzo, Andy and Renee Spinella, Colleen Fordham, a grandmother, and perhaps most relevant, the studios of Free Talk Live. The Crypto Six were arrested. 4 were released on bail conditions, but Ian Freeman was held hostage for 69 days. Rich Paul, also known as Nobody, remains captive. We've consulted attorneys who say no crime even appears to have been committed. But that didn't stop the Joint Thug Task Force from ripping out wires from our broadcast stacks, taking Free Talk Live off the air, resulting in a violation of our and your First Amendment rights. You can visit thecrypto6.com to help, but as importantly, contact other media and tell them about this outrage. This case is likely to set precedent for cryptocurrency use well into your future. Help our fight for liberty and financial freedom at thecrypto6.com.
What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191.
Is oral health important to you? If you don't like your own teeth, fresh breath, or kissing people, then by all means stop listening. Several years ago, I met Jessica Armand, founder and CEO of My Magic Mud, and I became passionate about the product that she created and never want to live without it. It's clinically proven to whiten teeth, but I find it does much more. They want you to love My Magic Mud as much as I do, so they're giving you a money-back guarantee plus 20% off. Go to mymagicmud.com and use coupon code FTL20 at checkout. mymagicmud.com, FTL20.
Don't miss a moment of Free Talk Live. Get our archives daily via our podcast at feeds.freetalklive.com.
It is Free Talk Live, and you can join us, 603-283-6160 if you'd like to call in. That's 603-283-6160. And I want to tell you about September the 4th. At 3:33 p.m., you can join the Smiles and Hugs for Peace virtual event. But you don't need any internet or digital device to participate. The virtuality consists of the fact that Star Child will not be physically present, but will manifest for you to the extent that your magical thinking allows you to conjure his presence. If you don't know who or what he is, no problem. Don't let that be an impediment to whatever magic you may experience. At approximately 3:33 p.m., You may hear the ringing of a bell or bells or other unusual sounds. Pause whatever you're doing, look around you, and start smiling. If you see someone else grinning, give that person a hug. If you see someone smiling and coming towards you, step up and give them a hug. And as you hug, hold this intention in your mind. A world based on love and cooperation, not coercion, is possible. Because both smiling and hugs are healthy and good for you, containing no carcinogens, trans fats, or high fructose corn syrup, and hopefully no artificial ingredients. That's 3:33 p.m. on September the 4th.
Thank you, Star Child, for shining some positivity in this world. We need it.
I mean, it's weird. I can't do that live read without smiling the entire time.
That just made me so happy. Every time it makes me so happy. So thank you, Star Child.
We've got Tom calling from New Hampshire. Tom, you're on Free Talk Live.
19 years ago today, they were serving a civil commitment order in Maryland. Now, you may know that the New Hampshire State Constitution, part of the first Article 10, has the right of revolution, where it says, quote,
yes, it
does. The doctrine of non-resistance against arbitrary power and oppression is absurd, slavish, and destructive of the good and happiness of mankind, unquote. Well, that also happens to appear in the State Constitution of Maryland in Declaration of Rights, Article 6, and in the Tennessee State Constitution, Article 1, Section 2. And this was Maryland.
That's disappointing. I was hoping only New Hampshire had that. New Hampshire does indeed have a right to revolt written into its constitution. New Hampshire's constitution is pretty hardcore on some stuff.
Live free or die, baby.
Now, anyway, they were going to take this guy away, and if he was a threat to others, why didn't they have a warrant for his arrest on a charge of criminal threatening? If he was a threat to himself, well, it's his body, it's his life. He fought back like a man to defend himself, and he took out not one, but two Prince George's County deputy sheriffs. By the way, that's the county where I was born many years before that. And so you people...
Now, run this by me again, because I think I may have missed it. Why were they after this guy?
That's the county where I was born in, and he gunned down...
No, Tom, I need you to answer the question. Why were they after this guy?
Because they had a civil commitment order to take him to a mental institution where he likely would have been drugged also. And, this is what it takes to say no to drugs. Now, he wound up taking out two cops. And if you've been voting for candidates who are in favor of forced hospitalization and forced drugging, well, there's two dead cops in your face. You didn't pull the trigger, but you did pull the lever. And so the blood of those cops is on your hands.
Well, I think a lot of those people would probably make the argument that the fact that he killed two deputies is proof that they should have, caught him earlier and had him committed against his will.
Well, actually, if he killed those deputies, if he was insane, then they can't prosecute him because he was not guilty by reason of insanity. And if he was perfectly sane, then they had no right to issue the warrant in the first place, and he's simply defending himself against a couple of gun-toting goons in bulletproof vests, following what the state constitution advises people to do. The doctrine of non-resistance is absurd, slavish, and destructive of the good and happiness of mankind.
Well, I certainly don't think it's a good idea to kill two sheriff's deputies. That's a really bad idea, and that doesn't help the situation. What ended up happening with this guy?
I think he went to prison instead of going to the mental institution. So
yes, it did not do him any favors at all.
But what's worse?
My argument against involuntary committing is that the definition, what we consider insane, changes all the time because it's relative, realistically, and just 2 decades ago, a trans person would have been considered mentally ill and probably in need of being committed involuntarily under certain circumstances.
You can't argue, though, with I'm being sarcastic here. You look at the success stories where they ask the hostage do you want to get committed or do you feel better now? And they say, oh, I feel better now, and they get released. So, I mean, there's all these success stories. It happened to one guy in Virginia. Do you feel better now or do you want to get committed? And he said he felt a whole lot better, and arguably they saved his life because he had been suicidal. And if you want to see how grateful he was, look what he did at Virginia Tech on 16 April of 2007, where the body count stands at 33.
Well, a person who is feeling suicidal is overwhelmingly unlikely to actually see that through to the end. This is what friends and family are for. A person who's feeling suicidal should ideally reach out to friends and family, who are far better equipped to help you than the police are. The police typically only make things worse.
They can't reach out if it carries with it the clear and present danger of being locked up and drugged. And so to avoid that clear and present danger, they don't say anything, they don't reach out for help. There's even literature on how to spot somebody who's feeling suicidal. These are the 5 signs, what not to do if you don't want to get locked up, essentially, is what the literature says. And so they cannot seek professional help, just like they can't get help for the same reason they can't get your TV. If they go and get your TV out of your house, then they might get locked up for going and getting your TV. And if they go and get help, that might result in worse. They get locked up and they get drugged.
Yeah. You're right. It would be better if friends and family, if they knew that their friends and family wouldn't be like immediately calling 911. I need you to go check on them. They're being suicidal.
Yeah. Well, at least the story had a happy ending. 2 dead cops.
That
doesn't make me happy.
Thank you for the call tonight, though, Tom. It's certainly a problem. Yeah. Mental health illnesses, they become more mainstream to talk about these days, and that's good. And there's actually an article I want to talk about. They're so mainstream that CVC, that's the pharmacy, wants to throw in therapists in their business.
Yeah, the minute clinics.
Yeah.
I think that's ridiculous. I don't think that's a great idea, but it is really nice that mental health, because previously mental health was not seen as something legitimate. And I actually, last night, I did a training at work on, we have to do, every once in a while, we have to do these e-learning things. So we have to make sure that we are up to date on all of, the most current data and, procedures and whatnot. So I did an hour-long training on how to spot people that are suicidal and what to do in those cases and how to protect them. But I think holding people hostage and Section 12ing them and force medicating them is an awful thing to do. We should help, but it should be a voluntary exchange. It shouldn't be forced.
I mean, there probably are people who need to be involuntarily committed, but I don't have the answers to that. That's beyond me. Maybe you have an answer. 603-283-6160.
Free Talk Live's video archives have been on LBRY for years. LBRY is an uncensorable, decentralized, blockchain-based media sharing protocol, and we're big fans of it here on Free Talk Live. In 2020, LBRY launched Odysee, a video sharing website to compete with YouTube, and it's really taking off. Now with over 1 million channels. YouTube's crackdown for not towing the government line on COVID, the Free Talk Live YouTube channel started receiving strikes and could be completely taken down at any moment. Thankfully, Odysee started offering live streaming, so we're now streaming live every night and posting our video archives permanently to Odysee. You can watch live or anytime on our Odysee channel by visiting video.freetalklive.com. If you want to go all in, download the desktop app at lbry.com, and then every video archive you watch, you'll help seed and keep it online forever. At minimum, we ask you visit video.freetalklive.com and follow us on Odysee today. video.freetalklive.com.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Jagruti Dave. US officials say they've conducted a drone strike in Kabul in Afghanistan on a car filled with explosives. US Central Command spokesperson Captain Bill Urban said they'd eliminated an imminent ISIS-K threat to Hamid Karzai International Airport. Earlier, the State Department had warned of another specific credible threat and urged US citizens near Kabul Airport to leave the area. This was the second US strike on an ISIS target since last Thursday's airport bombing, which killed scores of Afghans and 13 US service members members. On Sunday, President Joe Biden went to Dover Air Force Base in Delaware to honor those American personnel killed in Kabul as their remains were brought back to the United States, known as a dignified transfer. Amid the tragedy of lives lost, the US is continuing with its evacuation from Afghanistan until August the 31st. Speaking to NBC's Meet the Press, US Secretary of State Anthony Blinken admitted it was unlikely the US would have a diplomatic presence in the country after that date.
Our commitment to continue to help people leave Afghanistan who want to leave and who are not out by September 1st, that endures. There's no deadline on that effort.
US President Joe Biden visited the Federal Emergency Management Agency headquarters for an update on Hurricane Ida, which has made landfall in Louisiana. With winds of around 150 miles per hour, it's expected to be one of the strongest storms to hit the area and comes on the 16th anniversary of Hurricane Katrina, which devastated New Orleans. President Biden urged people in the path of the Category 4 storm to heed the advice of local authorities.
Everyone should listen to the instructions from local and state officials just how dangerous this is and take it seriously.
As residents brace themselves, there are also concerns for Louisiana's health system, which is already bearing the brunt of one of the country's worst coronavirus outbreaks. 7-time Emmy Award-winning actor Ed Asner has died at the age of 91. His family confirmed the news on the actor's Twitter account, writing, "We are sorry to say that our beloved patriarch passed away this morning peacefully. Words cannot express the sadness we feel." Ed Asner was best known for playing the grouchy newsman Lou Grant in the 1970s sitcom The Mary Tyler Moore Show and his eponymous spin-off show. He spoke about his experiences on The Mary Tyler Moore Show in an interview with the Freedom Forum.
Mary was fun because to have a live audience and get those laughs and have them at the same time recorded on film is a wonderful, wonderful pleasure, dying and going to heaven.
He won Emmys for his role in both of these shows, as well as for his performances in the 1976 series Rich Man, Poor Man and the groundbreaking 1977 miniseries Roots. A younger generation will recognise him as Santa Claus in the 2003 Will Ferrell comedy Elf. He also lent his voice to the Oscar-winning 2009 Pixar animation film Up. From bureaus worldwide, this.
We're still not sure why you'd want to watch, but our video feed is streaming nightly for free at cam.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live, and it doesn't like we've been shut down on YouTube yet tonight. Of course, that is inevitable. We're constantly being shut down on YouTube just regularly for medical misinformation. It's hitting us everywhere, Facebook, Twitter, and that's why we've been putting our videos on Library for years. It's an uncensorable, decentralized, blockchain-based media sharing protocol, and we love it here on Free Talk Live. So in 2020, when Library launched Odyssey, which is a video sharing website that's meant to compete with YouTube. And by the way, it's really taking off with more than 1 million channels. Free Talk Live got on board. During YouTube's crackdown for not towing the government line on COVID, our YouTube channel started receiving strikes, and it could honestly be completely taken down at any moment. Well, it's a bit more predictable now. We learned that it's 3 strikes within a 90-day period or something to that effect, and then they go away. So it's very unclear, but really, it's inevitable that they're going to find a reason to take us down. Thankfully, Odyssey started offering live streaming, so we're streaming live every night and posting our video archives permanently to Odyssey, and I just realized why it's a terrible idea to, recommend Odyssey, because here, on more than one occasion in this live read that I typed, I spelled it Odyssey like Homer's The Odyssey.
Yeah, it's not spelled that way.
No, it's not. The best way to find it is video.freetalklive.com. That takes you directly to our channel. It's video.freetalklive.com, and there we can't be censored. But let's go to the phones. We have Altar calling from Mexico. Altar, you're on Free Talk Live.
Well, hello, people. How are we today?
Hey, what's on your mind tonight?
Well, since we are basically in the middle of a insurgency, I think we pretty much can all agree on that. The bottom line is this.
I don't know that I agree on that. Why do you think we're in the middle of an insurgency?
Because all the lies on conventional media that are being told about the so-called vaccine when we know it's gene therapy. Number two, how they're censoring people in cancel culture. That basically classifies as insurgency.
Well, we're certainly being censored, but I don't think of myself as an insurgent by any means. I'm just a free person who's trying to be free.
You aren't one of the people that are basically cancel culturing people now, are you?
Well, cancel culture is a cultural thing and not really related to the state. But go ahead. That wasn't your point tonight.
Well, every generation in this country has had to fight something different. Our parents and grandparents had to go through the McCarthy hearings. Basically, in this, we have to keep using the truth and keep hammering it home through, if not social media, and as people get canceled, go to the grassroots things. And in grassroots, what power does a flyer that basically tells the truth, what power does that hold when people pass it by on the streets?
I don't know the answer to that. I know that handing people flyers directly, I've seen some success with that on the few occasions I've done it. Usually, handing someone a flyer, it's supposed to be a conversation starter, as I understand it. I'm not nearly as experienced with this form of activism as someone like, Ian Freeman would be, but hopefully you should introduce them to the flyer in a way that, creates curiosity within them and causes them to ask some questions, not just hand them a sheet of paper and send them on their day that they're going to throw it into the next trash can they walk by.
Or even just seeing one on the wall. Sometimes it's nice to, if you feel alone in your opinion and you see, something that you agree with, like anti-vaccine mandate stuff, you know.
But it's an interesting question, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I take my experience basically from the Army's only counterterrorist unit, which I was in for 5.5 years ago in the 90s. And I will tell you, when you start papering an area like that, it wakes people up. Why? Because it's grassroots.
Interesting concept. I don't know how successful someone would be. I mean, first of all, you're not going to be successful during the midst of this pandemic handing out flyers anyway. A lot of people, I imagine, would just not be inclined to take them more so than ever. But that's fundamentally different from the U.S. military, I think, dropping a bunch of pamphlets out of an area. Maybe that is effective, maybe it isn't. But I don't know how to get the information to people who, work in hospitals and don't know the basics about COVID-19 or the vaccines or any of that. I don't have the slightest idea how to reach those people with these ideas that they're not hearing on mainstream media, or that they would be hearing on mainstream media, except they appear to be tuning it out. Because it's not like the mainstream media isn't talking about this stuff, but for whatever reason, the world isn't hearing it. We've also got Major Payne calling from Michigan. Major Payne, you're on Free Talk Live.
Yeah, good evening. Your last caller lit a fire in my head. I want y'all to remember a little ditty that was released that probably started the American War, or it certainly kindled the fire. A little 10 or 12 page pamphlet called Common Sense by Thomas Paine.
Yep.
So papering the neighborhood definitely does work. You got to wake people up somehow, and when they can't get it off the inner tube or wherever they're trying to suck their poison from, you put it in their face. But
that's a fair point.
As far as all this coronavirus business goes, most people don't know back in, I think it was 2008 or 2010, Johnson & Johnson bought one of these other giant pharmaceutical companies. I don't think it was Moderna. I think it was Pfizer.
Yeah, you said this to me when I was screening the call, so I had someone look into it for me because it just sounded so incredible that I was like, that can't possibly be true. That has to be a crazy conspiracy theory. But no, in fact, on Johnson & Johnson's own website, in news releases from December 20th, 2006, Johnson & Johnson completes acquisition of Pfizer Consumer Healthcare.
Doesn't surprise me one bit.
So Pfizer is, in fact, owned entirely by Johnson & Johnson.
Now let's go to the world stage. China's on a 1,000-year plan. Europe's on a 100-year plan as far as they're trying to figure out which way to go and which bend in the river to take. Our politicians in Washington can't coincide on a 10-year plan.
Well, when governments put together these long-term plans, they tend to not follow them anyway. I mean, all of the story of Soviet Russia's 5 years plans, and I think the Chinese Communist government's doing it as well. I don't want a government that has a plan. I want a government that goes, hey, yeah, we don't know what we're doing.
Look, the Founding Fathers had skin in the game. They fought a war for 10 years before they wrote the documents and signed the papers, and they did it under threat of being lynched. These jamokes we got there are political pariahs. They're just in there for the game. They got no skin in it.
Do you mean current politicians?
Yes, our current politicians, for probably since the end of World War II. Dwight D. Eisenhower, on his way out, his resigning speech was, beware of the military, what did he call it? Not the military agenda.
The military-industrial complex. Yes, and I still think most Americans should, go back and rewatch that speech because he was right. I mean, he was one of the presidents who helped create this monstrosity. He warned us about it, and now the monstrosity, the military-industrial complex, just spent trillions of dollars in Afghanistan to replace the Taliban with the Taliban. He was
the last general in the White House, and he warned us what was coming. And we've had nothing but pariahs since. I mean, listen to Ronald Reagan told us, what's the 9 or 10 most feared words you can ever hear? I'm here from the government, and I've come to help.
Yeah.
Thank you for the call tonight, Major Payne. Yeah, the government has never helped anyone. It's really good at breaking your legs and then handing you a crutch and saying, well, thank goodness you have me. Otherwise, you wouldn't have a crutch. And people don't seem to pay attention to it. But I want to reiterate again that, in fact, Johnson & Johnson does own Pfizer Consumer Healthcare, which includes things like Tylenol, Reach, Splenda, Clean and Clear, Neutrogena.
Splenda?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Aveeno and all sorts of other things that Pfizer had developed. Sudafed, a nicotine line of smoking cessation treatments. I assume that's going to be Chantix or whatever it was called. All of them originally owned by Pfizer, now owned by Johnson & Johnson because Johnson & Johnson owns Pfizer. That was a twist I did not see coming. 603-283-6160. It's Free Talk Live.
The Shire Free Church offers a sanctuary to those seeking an escape from state churches.
The Shire Free Church is an interfaith, diverse group of people that may not share identical theological beliefs. As a member in or minister of the Shire Free Church, you are a sovereign individual and may be the faith of your choice.
We don't claim to have all of the answers.
We are open to all peaceful people.
We want to learn from each other.
What unifies the Shire Free Church and its diverse members is peace,
love, and liberty. There are many paths to God, one for every individual.
The Shire Free Church does not define a specific path beyond those parameters that must be your foundation.
Peace as your way.
Love as your guide.
And liberty as your light.
Learn more at church.shiresociety.com.
That's church.shiresociety.com.
There are basically two types of advertising, direct response and branding. Radio's great for direct response with its low cost to listener ratio, but audio can't be beat for branding, which is a longer term endeavor. You want to be the first thing that someone thinks of when they think about your product or service. If you have a local business that you want kept top of mind in your community, call the station. If you need national reach, Free Talk Live's got around 200 radio stations, millions of monthly listening sessions, can suit all budgets, and if we don't think we're right for you, we'll tell you. Email me, mark@freetalklive.com.
Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. Chat.lrn.fm. Why did you move to the Shire?
I moved here to the Shire because there's other people around who take liberty just as seriously as I do.
I moved to the Shire because I saw videos of people challenging authority and thought that I could get support myself. It called to me, like, do this, right now.
I wanted to be around people like me who got it, and once I got here, I knew there was nowhere else that I wanted to be.
I've always wanted to change the world, so I moved to the Shire to join people who were actually working towards doing the same thing.
The people here are awesome, loving, and positive. It was for the adventure and for the feeling of something important is happening here, and I just wanted to come to sort of be part of that.
Visit ShireSociety.com to read and sign the Shire Society Declaration and learn the reasons why, if you love liberty, you should immigrate to the Shire. Plus, connect with others via the forum at ShireSociety.com. That's ShireSociety.com. Some of you asked, and now we've delivered. LRN.FM's live Keene, New Hampshire studio shows are now streamed in HD on Twitch. Visit our channel at twitch.lrn.fm and give it a follow. If you have Amazon Prime, you get one free subscription on Twitch. If you use it on our channel, Twitch will give LRN.FM a monthly piece of your Prime subscription cost. So please watch, follow, share, and subscribe to twitch.lrn.fm. That's twitch.lrn.fm.
Looking for a great real estate investment? Consider New Hampshire, which is ground zero for the Liberty Movement. Your first call should be to Mark Worden from Porcupine Real Estate. He's more than just a real estate agent. He's your New Hampshire concierge. Where are the best places to live? Do you want farm, city, the burbs, or forest? Do you want a duplex or multifamily building so that renters pay your mortgage? There are homes in all price ranges in New Hampshire, and Mark can help with financing too. Invest in liberty and property. Mark Worden can help.
PorcupineRealEstate.com.
Yep, we still do email. Drop your email address in the entry box at freetalklive.com, and you'll be kept in the loop with Free Talk Live.
It's Free Talk Live with Aria and
Nikki.
And you're invited to join us, 603-283-6160. You can join the conversations we're having or change the subject and talk about whatever you'd like. 603-283-6160. I want to say thank you to the new number 2. That's tonight's amplifier. That means that the new number 2 is a member of the AMP program. You can find it at amp.freetalklive.com. That's amp.freetalklive.com. It's money that is used strictly to advertise, market, and promote Free Talk Live. So if you like the show, if you value the ideas of liberty and want to help us get on more radio stations, joining the AMP program is the best way to do that, as the new number 2 has done. It only costs $5 per month. That gets you in. And it does come with a number of cool little perks, but really the reason you should join is because you want to help Free Talk Live to reach a larger audience. So thank you to the new number 2. And let's keep going with the phones. We've got David calling from New Mexico. David, you're on Free Talk Live.
Yeah, the military-industrial complex. How about the media-industrial complex? So you're a radio program, so get a load of this and tell me what you think of this. A radio station owner in Albuquerque, in fact, the guy that owns the station that's carrying you to a market right now of 1.2 million via his radio station, KIVA in Albuquerque, the Rock of Talk, Eddie Aragon. He's got himself on the ballot for mayor, and there are only 3 people on the ballot for mayor, and he made kind of a sly move because the other 2 are both Democrats, and he's the only Republican that's on the ballot. Not that he's a big fan of the corporate Republican Party, but he recognized an opportunity, and because of the bylaws of the party, they have to support him. But
I love it when that works out. The way it worked out here in New Hampshire is that I think we discovered they don't have to support you. They can just say nothing.
I guess it depends on the bylaws of the party.
Sure.
And the bylaws here in Albuquerque or in Bernalillo County Republican Party, the bylaws, to my knowledge, say that they, in this situation, they must support him. Anyway, here's the fun part. The competing radio station in the market in the talk format, which is the largest station in the state, the huge corporate Cumulus station, Cumulus having 400 and some radio stations around the nation. This one is KKOB in Albuquerque, and they have done an interesting thing. They have nonstop political candidates on their programs by invitation, but they don't invite Eddie Aragon. In fact, not only do they not invite Eddie Aragon, it has been learned that the corporate management at KKOB, whether it's Jared Hart or one of the other corporate people there at the radio station, they have issued an order that Eddie Aragon's name is literally, he's not allowed to appear, so they won't let him call in or be a guest or anything. The reason being because he is a competing radio station. Whether or not that is legal, I don't know, but that's what they're doing. And
that's
it gets even worse.
That's not in any way related to his mayor candidacy. He's also the only Republican, right?
Yes.
This has to look bad for them. You said that's KKOB?
Yeah, KKOB Radio, news radio, KKOB.com in Albuquerque, New Mexico. So, yeah, it looks bad for him. It gets even worse. Here's an interesting thing. We have recordings of it. I got on the Eric Strauss show yesterday morning. I got dumped right after I said Eddie because the next word is Aragon. They also have a policy of not even letting his name be heard on the radio station. If somebody mentions it, you get dumped like I did. And one more interesting point about it is when they on their Bob Clark show or their Brandon Vogt show or their Eric Strauss show, when they have candidates on or even discuss the mayoral race, they only mention the two Democrat candidates. If they're discussing the mayoral race, they'll discuss Tim Keller, the current mayor, and they'll discuss Manny Gonzalez, the current sheriff, trying to run against the current mayor, and they will not even mention that there is a third candidate and the only Republican on the ballot. They will not say the name of Eddie Aragon.
Well, I'm sure it's legal for them to do that. I mean, it's their station. They can manage it however they want, but it's certainly messed up.
So they dislike him only because he has a competing radio station, or do they not like his politics?
It's probably both. He would be a competitor and actually that's probably lesser. It's probably more that they don't like his political viewpoints, and it's not even so much the actual viewpoint. It's more that they are the good old boy system, and Eddie would be rocking the boat and breaking up the good old boy system is the way I see it.
So is this guy libertarian? I'm not familiar with who he is.
He has libertarian beliefs, leaning small L libertarian. He's not a libertarian party person. He's a small L libertarian.
Well, keep us updated on how that goes, David. I'm certainly not happy to hear about a radio station refusing to allow a political candidate to even be named on their station.
Yeah, that's weird that they won't. You're not even allowed to say his name.
That does seem to be taking it a bit far.
Yeah.
I mean, this dude, I guess they want to do the same thing that the media did to Ron Paul in 2012, I think it was, where they just never mentioned him. Even Jon Stewart called out the mainstream media on this because I think it was after the Iowa caucuses where Ron Paul placed third or fourth. I don't recall exactly now, but he placed pretty well. And the mainstream media was like, okay, this person came in first, this person came in second, this person came in fourth, this person came in fifth. And
they just totally skipped right over him. I remember that.
They did. And even Jon Stewart called them out on it. I was surprised by that, but they certainly did it. And I mean, the media will play some screwed up games. When you have a centralized entity that can do that, it will do that if they believe it benefits themselves to do it.
It's hard to be an outsider.
It is. And I mean, especially when the world is so centrally dominated.
Yeah. And it seems like it's just getting worse. Unfortunately, I hate to be negative, but if we're following patterns and trends, it seems like everything's becoming more and more centralized.
It is. And, the world, Satoshi Nakamoto at least, invented this technology that was supposed to help get away from that. It was supposed to be pushed back against the centralization, the banking system, the financial destruction that governments are wreaking. And then there came the cryptocurrency exchanges. And all they want is to be the modern banks. And now they're complaining that they want to tap into Federal Reserve payment systems that traditional banks use to move money around quickly. Now, obviously, the banks are pushing back at this, but basically, cryptocurrency companies like Coinbase, Kraken, all of these others, they just want to become the next banks. And we're going to get into that. But we've been talking about the nurse shortages and the nurse well, we haven't actually gotten to the nurse protesting yet. We probably should get into that because you attended one of these recently, and you weren't even at the right one, and you still found people protesting. Because this is New Hampshire.
Yep, that's the beauty of New Hampshire, where you can drive 45 minutes in the wrong direction and still find a protest, not only just a random protest, it was also an anti-vaccine mandate protest. So
I imagine these are occurring at most hospitals, though, because these people exist everywhere. These people who don't want to have this done to them against their will or lose their livelihood, because nursing is a career. That's not your average, you work at a fast food place thing.
Yeah,
this is an actual career.
And nursing school is very hard to get into, and nursing school is extremely, extremely challenging. So people who get into this field, they're serious about it, and they're doing this because they
care
love
about
it, because they care about patients. So a lot of people aren't just willing to lay down and die or just be like, oh, well, I'll go get another job. It doesn't really work like that. So this article is from California. As vaccine mandates spread, protests follow. Some spurred by nurses. A new round of protests like last year's have sprung up in recent days, fueled in part.
I like how they're acknowledging that there were protests last year, because last year when the protests were happening, they pretended like they weren't.
Yeah, all the protests. Well, so last year, all the protests were about the lockdowns and the mask mandates. Now the protests are about the vaccine mandates. And
we knew it was going to get to this point. That was why we resisted the mask mandates in the first place, because we said, oh, hey, look, if you allow them to do this, then they're going to come back a year later with this.
And that's exactly what happened. So many people were like, oh, whatever, just, it's not that bad. Just wear it and go into the store. And they realized, well, if we can get away with forcing people to do this, if they'll submit to this, then we're going to do the vaccine mandates, and it's just going to keep getting worse and worse and worse.
I'm sick of the people saying, look, it's just an inconvenience to you. It's not that big a deal. Relax. Hey, look, that's what they said to the blacks who lived in the South during the segregation era.
Exactly.
It's not that big a deal. It's just an inconvenience that you have to use that water fountain. It's Free Talk Live.
When Monster Hunter International discovers one of Isaac Newton's wardstones being auctioned off, they decide to steal it and use it to destroy the Chaos God once and for all. But a mysterious thief upends their plan, and it soon becomes a race against time as something much older and infinitely more evil awakens in the jungles of South America. Monster Hunter Bloodlines by New York Times bestselling author Larry Correia and Baen Books. Visit monsterhunternation.com for more.
Are you tired of governments murdering people around the world? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless free market non-political currency. Bitcoin cannot be inflated or controlled by any government. By using their money, you are helping the state. Stop doing it. You have an incredible alternative available now. Learn it, use it, spread it. Get started with Bitcoin at bitcoin.com. That's bitcoin.com.
So you've signed the Shire Society Declaration and are planning your move to New Hampshire to be around more liberty-oriented people. Next, sign up for the Shire Society Forum at forum.shiresociety.com. There are a bunch of people there who are already in the Shire, and they want to meet you. If you're already in the Shire physically, you should also come by the forums. Remember, not everyone uses Facebook. New people are signing up for the Shire Society Forum every month, so drop in and say hello at forum.shiresociety.com. If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 3 is next after the news here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Jagruti Dave. US officials say they've conducted a drone strike in Kabul in Afghanistan on a car filled with explosives. US Central Command spokesperson Captain Bill Urban said they'd eliminated an imminent ISIS-K threat to Hamid Karzai International Airport. Earlier, the State Department had warned of another specific credible threat and urged US citizens near Kabul airport to leave the area. This was the second US strike on an ISIS target since last Thursday's airport bombing, which killed scores of Afghans and 13 US service members. On Sunday, President Joe Biden went to Dover Air Force Base in Delaware to honour those American personnel killed in Kabul as their remains were brought back to the United States, known as a dignified transfer. Amid the tragedy of lives lost, the US is continuing with its evacuation from Afghanistan until August the 31st. Speaking to NBC's Meet the Press, US Secretary of State Anthony Blinken admitted it was unlikely the US would have a diplomatic presence in the country after that date.
First, in terms of having an on-the-ground diplomatic presence on September 1st, that's not likely to happen. But what is going to happen is that our commitment to continue to help people leave Afghanistan who want to leave and who are not out by September 1st, that endures. There's no deadline on that effort.
Republicans have continued their attacks against President Biden and his team for what they are characterizing as a bungled troop withdrawal. One of those is Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell, who was speaking on Fox News Sunday.
After we left Saigon, there weren't Vietnamese terrorists who were planning on attacking us here at home.
US President Joe Biden visited the Federal Emergency Management Agency headquarters for an update on Hurricane Ida, which has made landfall in Louisiana. With winds of around 150 miles per hour, it's expected to be one of the strongest storms to hit the area and comes on the 16th anniversary of Hurricane Katrina, which devastated New Orleans. President Biden urged people in the path of the Category 4 storm to heed the advice of local authorities.
Everyone should listen to the instructions from local and state officials just how dangerous this is and take it seriously.
Hundreds of thousands of people in Louisiana are without power. The state's governor, John Bell Edwards, told people to be prepared.
It is a good idea to have a mattress nearby that you can use to put over yourself and other family members to protect you from any falling debris.
As residents brace themselves, there are also concerns for Louisiana's health system, which is bearing the brunt of one of the country's worst coronavirus outbreaks. 7-time Emmy Award-winning actor Ed Asner has died at the age of 91. His family confirmed the news on the actor's Twitter account, writing, "We are sorry to say that our beloved patriarch passed away this morning peacefully. Words cannot express the sadness we feel." Ed Asner was best known for his role as Lou Grant in the 1970s US sitcom The Mary Tyler Moore Show and his eponymous spin-off series. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks, remembering today the Hollywood legend Ed Asner, who died on Sunday at the age of 91. He was in the 1980s not only one of the top stars on American television, but he was also the head of the Screen Actors Guild, the acting union in America, and after that, very active on the left of the US political spectrum. It is as the curmudgeonly newsman Lou Grant that he will be best remembered, a role that started out as a central figure in the much-beloved Mary Tyler Moore comedy show, but then transitioned to a spin-off, a serious drama called Lou Grant, about the role of the press in American democracy.
Nobody knew the unbelievable sea change between doing a 3-camera live comedy to a 1-camera filmed drama. I was constantly told by the 2 producers, now we're not going to be down on the set with you, so you got to remember who Lou is. You got to keep that spirit of Lou. Well, I kept trying to keep that spirit of Lou with no laughs because it's a filmed drama.
Ed Asner talking to the Freedom Forum. It was a brilliant filmed drama that would eventually continue for 114 episodes. He was 40 when he found fame. He was still working into his 80s, lending his voice to the elderly widower in the animated comedy Up. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks.
The main headlines again. US officials say they've conducted a drone strike in Kabul in Afghanistan on a car filled with explosives. Hurricane Ida has made landfall in Louisiana with winds of around 150 miles per hour. It's expected to be one of the strongest storms to hit the area. And 7-time Emmy Award-winning actor Ed Asner has died at the age of 91. That's the latest from Feature Story News. I'm Jagruti Dave in
Coming
up a little later, the 10 best careers for someone at your level of attractiveness.
Oh, but right now we have something truly incredible for you. Kenneth Quinn is a real-life psychic medium who claims that he can communicate with dead acquaintances. He's written a new book. It's called Small Talk from Beyond, Speaking with Distant Relatives and Friends of Friends Who Have Passed.
Hi,
Good to
Kenneth.
see you. Now,
Thank
Kenneth,
you.
you've written that you're able to connect people with the spirits of their old college professors or roommates that they didn't really know that well. When did you realize that you had this gift?
Well, it was the day after my cousin's friend's wife's funeral. I was at home and I suddenly felt a presence in the room with me. And I heard a voice say, "It's Vicky. Vicky Solchek, Dale's wife."
Wow.
We made a Tim's birthday thing a while back, and we talked about how hard it is having a cat.
Fascinating.
This has been so amazing.
This has been fabulous. Thank you, Kenneth Quinn, for being our guest. Stay with us because coming up next, we're going to show you how to lose some of that excessive weight by constantly picking at your skin.
This is the Onion News Network.
Free Talk Live.
It is Free Talk Live, and you're welcome to join us. 603-283-6160 is the phone number to do that. That's 603-283-6160. There's so much to talk about. I'm concerned we're not going to get to the major story of the day, which is the Category 4 hurricane currently hitting New Orleans, because there are so many other stories of the day that are either follow-ups to things we discussed in the past or just more, I don't want to say more interesting, because a Category 4 hurricane hitting New Orleans is really interesting, but stuff that we're more passionate about.
Yeah, it's true.
Like the story about crypto firms wanting a Fed payment system access, whatever that would mean, I don't exactly know. Vladimir Putin's got a shadowy army of global spies that people are supposed to be scared about. CVS wants to have their own therapist teams in supply. Florida record deaths and a judge barring a mask ban. I mean, there's just so much to talk about and so little time. But let's go to the phone. So we got Dana calling from Grand Rapids, Michigan. Dana, you're on Free Talk Live.
Hi, thanks, Aria. Nikki, I'd like to give you a shout out, but I want to quickly, I just want to say thank you, Nikki, but let me quick bone of contention I just thought of while I was on hold. There was a caller, a gentleman, a few calls back, and he mentioned two words that really irritate me. One is insurrection. People either need to get a dictionary, by the way, that's a book that you hold in your hand, or Google what it means. It is an armed uprising against authority or a government. They need to get the word out of their vernacular. There wasn't an insurrection on January 6th, and there isn't one going on now. The second thing he mentioned...
Well, I want to address that point real quick, because I think you're correct. I think he was very confused about what insurrection meant, and he seemed to think that insurrection is what oppression is supposed to mean.
Yeah, it seemed like, he was misusing the word.
He was misusing it. The second thing he misused was he doesn't know American history. He said, well, we have this, and our parents and grandparents had McCarthy. You know what? McCarthy wasn't this one-eyed cyclops. There were in Hollywood, as well as in the TV and radio, well, mostly radio, during the war, but especially in Hollywood, there were producers, directors, actors, actresses that were card-carrying communists and socialists, and they were trying to overthrow the government. They were from Europe, and they were card-carrying. So everybody talks about McCarthy like he was this horrible being, but there was justification to some of what they did. They didn't just start picking people. Now, did any innocent people get swept up in the hearings? I'm sure they did, as things happen today. But please stop using McCarthy as this cyclops, because there was some legitimacy to what they were doing during those hearings, and all you need to do is learn your American history. Okay, now to you, Nikki. Thank you, thank you, thank you. How can people not understand for you explaining about taxes and what is paying for these shots, and people telling you, well, just take them, we're paying taxes anyway. You're telling them, oh, you pay through the taxes, these shots aren't free. And then they say, well, we're paying taxes anyway. Excuse me, the government doesn't make anything. They don't make widgets. They just tax you more. And you correctly mentioned, Nikki, that not only are they going to raise our taxes to pay for all this spending, but they're printing more money, which devalues the dollar, which, oh, guess what? Then the Democrats get to stay in and, quote, unquote, this is with heavy sarcasm, help us forever. So I want to thank you for your diligence in explaining simple Economics 101. Again, people don't know their own history. Where do they think the money is coming from? Furthermore, Nikki, and I'm sure you're aware of this because you're a nurse, Johnson & Johnson has been sued for many things, among ovarian cancer that killed so many women, and those judgments were in the tens of millions per individual because they were promoting baby powder to use in their private area, and not in it, but down in their, their panties, for dryness. And they knew that this was dangerous and it caused cancer, and they did it just like the cigarette companies knew about the cancer. So they've got to make this money up somehow. So Aria and Nikki, hats off to you guys for educating your audience, and thank you, Aria, for exposing that Pfizer is owned by Johnson & Johnson. People just don't do their
I actually
research.
wasn't the one who exposed that. That was Major Payne, another caller. I had no idea.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Until he brought it up.
I'm actually surprised that we had never heard about that, because that seems like something we should have already known. I'm surprised
that
we
seems
didn't.
like something that, Dana, thank you so much for the call tonight. It was very pleasant to speak with you. It seems like something that would have been circulating on libertarian circles on social media from the start. And yet we're 19 months into this, and this is the first I've ever heard about it. But she's absolutely right. There have been countless lawsuits against Johnson & Johnson right now, Pfizer as well. As far as I can tell, there aren't any related to Moderna, but Moderna, I think, is kind of a new company, and my abilities to research things these days are
kind
limited.
of hindered, yeah.
So,
but she mentioned the baby powder thing, and I just want to kind of piggyback on that a little bit. That is just one of many, many, many lawsuits that Pfizer has been sued over for killing and harming people. That is just one of many. Billions of dollars they had to pay out because of different injuries, because of not only vaccines, medications, but their products. So it's like, if you can't get baby powder right, how are you going to get all this other stuff right? It seems unlikely.
It does. So. We've also got Dave listening on KIVA. Dave, you're on Free Talk Live.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Hey, what's on your mind tonight?
Well, let's see here. I'll start off with David out of Albuquerque. I concur with his conclusions because I have seen it myself being here in Los Lunas, which is 25, 30 miles south of Albuquerque, and him having owning a radio station. And he has been blocked from the alphabet soup of the mainstream media as they continue to push all kinds of stupid stuff. I could use a hard word, but, the FCC regulations require.
Yeah.
And we get down to insurrection. As a local color, I'm known as Dictionary Dave, and from Bouvier's Law Dictionary 1940, insurrection, a rebellion of citizens or subjects of a country or state against its government. Any open and active opposition of a number of persons to the executive of laws of the United States of so formidable character as to defy, for a time, being the authority of the government, constitutes an insurrection.
So, what happened on January the 6th would qualify as an insurrection according to this definition from the 1940s.
I still don't think so.
It would not qualify as an insurrection. It is a characterization of the people who want to take power. even though not accompanied by bloodshed, and even though not by the suffering of inflicted. Oh, wait.
Dave, thank you so much for the call tonight. That was a very long definition, but I mean, it did come out of the 1940s, and words evolve over time, and in the last 70, 80 years, God, it's really been that long, the word insurrection almost certainly doesn't have the same connotations and attachments to it today as it did back in the 1940s. As I understand an insurrection, whether the dictionary defines it this way or that way is irrelevant to me, because I'm more about how people communicate with each other. And the word insurrection does not communicate to me what happened on January the 6th.
No, not at all.
Other people have called them riots, and I don't think they qualified as riots either, but maybe I'm wrong.
Maybe a guided tour. Or an unguided tour, I mean.
A no-knock raid on the government. 603-283-6160. It's Free Talk Live.
Do you feel like your nation, state, or community no longer holds your values? Have you dreamt of a place where people agree that liberty is important and are free to pursue their projects so long as they respect the property of others? There are many people just like you that are discovering freeprivatecities.com. Their social media links are at the upper right of the page at freeprivatecities.com. All skill levels will be needed when the first of the Free Private Cities opens. It's sooner than you think. Stop arguing and build. freeprivatecities.com.
Breaking weather news. Belize is sunny and around 82 degrees every day this week.
What's the forecast for your life? If current politics and economic prospects are cramping your freedom, escape to the tropics. ECI Development has affordable second homes for you to own or rent in Belize and other tropical countries. Places with stable governments and growing economies. Secure your freedom now. To find out more, send an email to ftl@ecidevelopment.com.
The LRN.FM social media channels have been revamped. We've eliminated Facebook and focused on other platforms like Twitter and Mastodon, the decentralized alternative to Twitter. On our accounts, you'll find posts from multiple LRN.FM show hosts together in one place. Follow us on Twitter at twitter.lrn.fm, or better yet, move to the decentralized Mastodon social media platform at toot.lrn.fm, toot.lrn.fm. I think you'll like it.
After a devastating war, the alien visitors were driven back, and their willing human collaborators were left behind to face the music. When Emma Jean Anderson's ex-lover springs her from prison, Nathan Foster and his 14-year-old nephew Ben are tasked with bringing the pair to justice. An easy enough job until they discover something is inside Emma Jean, and the fate of the planet hangs in the balance. The Family Business by Mike Coopery from BaneBooks.com.
So the protection of life, liberty, and property is what the Free State Project is all about. But it's an effort to move 20,000 people who understand.
It's about demonstrating to the entire country
that, yeah, we can have a free market, a truly free market.
Making it just a freer, great place to live.
It's the world's largest voluntarist libertarian community, and it's only getting bigger.
That's amazing. To be able to move to a place where other people passionately believe in being free and independent.
What the Free State Project is managing to do, though, is to put their money where their mouth is. It's physically getting up across the country and saying, let's go someplace and let's demonstrate the power of these ideas. There's a lot of kind of philosophy that surrounds liberty. There's a lot of thinking about it and talking about it. But here in New Hampshire, people are doing it.
101 Reasons Liberty Lives in New Hampshire, a documentary by Free State Project early movers. Watch it free at 101reasonsfilm.com. 101reasonsfilm.com. There are lots of ways to listen to Free Talk Live. Our podcast has been around since podcasts began, and now the FTL feed is loaded with content besides our full show archives. Did you know that we make it easy for you to customize your podcast subscriptions? We have different feeds, one that includes only our full shows, one with just the Daily Digest, and our main feed that includes everything. You decide what you listen to. It's quick and easy to customize your feeds at feeds.freetalklive.com. That's feeds.freetalklive.com. The new 4th edition of Healing Our World, The Compassion of Libertarianism will take your understanding of liberty to a deeper level and has over 1,300 updated references, new cartoons, and a foreword by Dr. Ron Paul. With discounts for multiple book purchases, the 4th edition of Healing Our World is a great gift for the liberals, pragmatists, environmentalists, and Christians in your life who think libertarianism is cold-hearted. Get yours today at healing.freetalklive.com and use promo code FTL for a $5 discount.
Got Telegram? You can follow our channel there and discuss show prep with other listeners at telegram.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live, and you're welcome to join us. 603-283-6160. That's the call-in line for you to take control of the airwaves and talk about whatever's on your mind. 603-283-6160. And with you tonight, it's Aria.
And Nikki.
And I want to change subjects briefly. We've been talking about COVID all night, but I really want to get into this story because it's something that hits home for me in a lot of ways, and it's something that I've been talking about for years. And that's how cryptocurrency exchanges want to replace the current banking system. Now, cryptocurrency was invented shortly after the 2007 recession. Now, it had probably been in the works sometime before that, but that created the urgency. Then we had Bitcoin, and Satoshi Nakamoto in the early newsletters made it clear that a lot of this was because the banks are evil, and I don't think anyone left or right disputes that assessment of the banking institution.
It was kind of the whole point of crypto.
Yes. And then there were cryptocurrency exchanges like Mt. Gox and a bunch of others. And then, various things happened to them. Hacks happened, or they couldn't be trusted and they ran off with people's money. Then you had the rise of the 3rd or 4th generation of cryptocurrency exchanges like Coinbase, Binance, Gemini, and these others that realized that, hey, look, if we play ball with the government, if we create a number of years ago, back on Call to Freedom, which was a show I used to do, we talked about this article from Coinbase. It wasn't from Coinbase. It was about Coinbase and how they were working closely behind the scenes with Binance and some of these other cryptocurrencies to draft the regulations that would be used to oversee the cryptocurrency industry. And for those who don't remember how this has played out literally every other time it's happened, it basically means Coinbase, Binance, and these others want to create regulatory hurdles that are so high that there's no way a new company can come and compete with them. That's what it's always meant.
I would just like to read the first sentence of the Bitcoin white paper. A purely peer-to-peer version of electronic cash that would allow online payments to be sent directly from one party to another without going through a financial institution.
Excellent. Yes.
I think that just sums it up pretty clearly.
And here we have the first sentence of this. Cryptocurrency companies want to tap into the Federal Reserve payment systems that traditional banks use to move money around quickly. So Bitcoin exists so that they don't have to use the Federal Reserve System to move money around quickly. And there's already this technology that exists called cryptocurrency that means they don't have to tap into the Federal Reserve payment system. And yet, despite all of that, cryptocurrency exchanges, the companies responsible for helping the masses get crypto, want to tap in to this banking institution.
Because they don't care about the ethics of why cryptocurrencies were created.
No.
They just want to get rich. They just want more power, just like the state, just like the banks.
So these companies include Avanti Bank, which aims to provide custody services for institutional investors in cryptocurrencies, and Kraken, a cryptocurrency exchange platform. And I can assure you that Coinbase and Binance and Gemini, they're already in on this. They said direct access to the Fed's payment systems would allow them to more quickly and cheaply process orders from customers buying and selling digital assets. Currently, they must partner with traditional banks that have accounts with the Fed. So, Avanti Bank and Kraken want to have their own banks to which customers can send and receive money. They basically want to function as both a bank and a cryptocurrency exchange because, as you pointed out to them, it's all about making money. It's all about selling crypto for profit. It's not about believing in the ideas of cryptocurrency.
Unfortunately, yeah.
Traditional banks say that the newer financial firms are supervised relatively lightly and lack the internal controls needed to ensure against money laundering and other illicit activities. Concerns that regulators have expressed about the crypto industry more broadly, despite overwhelming evidence from the FBI as well as others that very little illicit activity occurs on the blockchain. They also add that the firms are riskier because they aren't insured by the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation. So a banking person says some banking sounding stuff, but Kraken says if they have their own way to access the Fed's payment systems, that could encourage more firms to follow their example, introducing more competition for banks. So they want to compete. This is them admitting the cryptocurrency exchanges. They want to compete directly with banks, not replace them. Just compete with them.
It seems like they're trying to make it sound like a good thing, but it does not sound like a good thing to me.
No, I don't want a cryptocurrency exchange to be a bank. I don't really want cryptocurrency exchanges, but if we're going to have them, their role should be to fight the banking system, not to become part of it.
Yeah, I guess if you can't beat them, join them.
That's what they are planning. A partner at Claros Group said it has the potential to reduce banks' traditional roles as gatekeepers and toll collectors for payment flows that are likely to grow over time. Yes, by turning the cryptocurrency exchanges into the gatekeepers and toll collectors. Last year, the central bank, that would be the Fed, processed about $900 trillion in payments on its systems. That means there is almost a quadrillion dollars in payments slushing through the Fed each year. That's insane. These range from small bank-to-bank payments, such as direct deposits or automatic bill payments, to large wire transfers. The struggle over access to the Fed's payment systems also reflects incumbent banks' concerns about the potential for competition from larger tech companies, such as Facebook and Google parent Alphabet, which don't face the same level of federal bank regulation. They have some reason to be paranoid, said a former comptroller of the currency. For example, DM Association, which is backed by Facebook and 25 other members, has said it is developing a blockchain-based payment network that will be faster and cheaper than existing systems while protecting consumers and providing safeguards against financial crime. Yes, their safeguard will be Facebook's ability to completely lock you out of your wallet if they want to. Diem is partnering with a Fed-regulated bank on the project, so that's Libra is what they're talking about, or whatever it's called now, the Diem Association or whatever. It's Facebook and Visa and MasterCard and I think PayPal and a bunch of others. They're already partnered with a Fed-regulated bank. But if other companies get direct access to the Fed's payment systems, they may not need to take the additional step of partnering with established banks, according to banking lawyers and former regulators. So these tech companies like Diem and Kraken and I forget the other, Altrium or whatever it was, they don't want to work through the banks. They just want to be the banks. And that's scary. But we all saw it coming. I don't know if we all saw it coming, but I certainly saw it coming. I haven't stopped talking about this since I realized that this is what they were going to do. This is how the U.S. government takes control of cryptocurrency.
I used to think that Kraken was cool back in the day. That used to be what I would use.
They are the cooler of the available options, from what I can tell.
I feel like years ago they seemed pretty more legit, like less scummy than what's another one, like Coinbase or something,
Coinbase is definitely the most scummy of them.
And then eventually I was like, nah, and I just kind of transferred everything into Edge Wallet because I'm like, this one's definitely not scummy.
Yeah, I mean, to give you an idea of what they want to do, I mean, they already, they're already the one processing whether or not you can send or receive cryptocurrency. They're making you wait 5 to 7 days at times, and of course, they're charging you a fee for all of this. They're the new gatekeepers and the new toll collectors. It couldn't be more plain. 603-283-6160. There's more coming up because this story, it really just gets worse. 603-283-6160. It's Free Talk Live.
Carl Watner, longtime proponent of a voluntary society, died last December. You may have seen his articles published on his website, voluntarist.com, in his newsletter, The Voluntarist, the Mises Institute, or elsewhere over the last 40 years. His newest book, I Must Speak Out, Volume 2, The Best of the Voluntarist, is now available via Liberty Under Attack Publications. This 430-page second volume spans the years of 2000 through 2020 and includes articles by Carl Watner, Hans Hermann Hoppe, Karl Hess, Benjamin Tucker, George H. Smith, Lysander Spooner, Pete Eyre, Joyce Brand, and many others. I Must Speak Out is for the newly initiated, the veteran voluntarist, or anywhere in between. Buy the book now at libertyunderattack.com/voluntarist. For more great content on building a voluntary society and for Carl's extensive archives, check out voluntarist.com.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Jagruti Dave. US officials say they've conducted a drone strike in Kabul in Afghanistan on a car filled with explosives. US Central Command spokesperson Captain Bill Urban said they'd eliminated an imminent ISIS-K threat to Hamid Karzai International Airport. Earlier, the State Department had warned of another specific credible threat and urged US citizens near Kabul Airport to leave the area. This was the second US strike on an ISIS target since last Thursday's airport bombing, which killed scores of Afghans and 13 US service members. On Sunday, President Joe Biden went to Dover Air Force Base in Delaware to honour those American personnel killed in Kabul as their remains were brought back to the United States, known as a dignified transfer. Amid the tragedy of lives lost, the US is continuing with its evacuation from Afghanistan until August the 31st. Speaking to NBC's Meet the Press, US Secretary of State Anthony Blinken admitted it was unlikely the US would have a diplomatic presence in the country after that date.
Our commitment to continue to help people leave Afghanistan who want to leave and who are not out by September 1st, that endures. There's no deadline on that effort.
US President Joe Biden visited the Federal Emergency Management Agency headquarters for an update on Hurricane Ida, which has made landfall in Louisiana. With winds of around 150 miles per hour, it's expected to be one of the strongest storms to hit the area and comes on the 16th anniversary of Hurricane Katrina, which devastated New Orleans. President Biden urged people in the path of the Category 4 storm to heed the advice of local authorities.
Everyone should listen to the instructions from local and state officials, just how dangerous this is, and take it seriously.
As residents brace themselves, there are also concerns for Louisiana's health system, which is already bearing the brunt of one of the country's worst coronavirus outbreaks. 7-time Emmy Award-winning actor Ed Asner has died at the age of 91. His family confirmed the news on the actor's Twitter account, writing, "We are sorry to say that our beloved patriarch passed away this morning peacefully. Words cannot express the sadness we feel." Ed Asner was best known for playing the grouchy newsman Lou Grant in the 1970s sitcom The Mary Tyler Moore Show and his eponymous spin-off show. He spoke about his experiences on The Mary Tyler Moore Show in an interview with the Freedom Forum.
Mary was fun because to have a live audience and get those laughs and have them at the same time recorded on film is a wonderful, wonderful pleasure, dying and going to heaven.
He won Emmys for his role in both of these shows, as well as for his performances in the 1976 series Rich Man, Poor Man and the groundbreaking 1977 miniseries Roots. A younger generation will recognise him as Santa Claus in the 2003 Will Ferrell comedy Elf. He also lent his voice to the Oscar-winning 2009 Pixar animation film Up. From bureaus worldwide, this is...
Do you appreciate what we do? Help us advertise, market, and promote for just $5 a month at amp.freetalklive.com.
It is Free Talk Live. You're invited to join us. 603-283-6160. That's the call-in line if you want to take control of the airwaves and talk about whatever's important to you. 603-283-6160. With you tonight, it's Arya and Nikki. And one of the things that's important to me is cryptocurrency. I'm not legally allowed to use it at the moment. And I'm cut off from the cryptocurrency world for the most part. I mean, I still know people in cryptocurrency.
Can still talk about it,
yes.
though.
But, I mean, it sucks. This is something that Since I first learned about it, I've been a hardcore believer in it and its goals of liberating the average person to control their own finances. To me, that's the number one thing we can do to ensure individual freedom. But it also defunds the war machine, and it defunds the drug war, and it does all of these other. If ever there was a magic elixir that was going to cure the bulk of humanity's problems, and there isn't, it would be cryptocurrency.
Yeah, cryptocurrency was a big game changer in so many ways.
And it's still changing things. Time will tell how it all plays out, but it's definitely still changing things. And we've got Greg calling from New York. Greg, you're on Free Talk Live.
Hey, so yeah, definitely. I've been in the cryptocurrency world for a while and been designing my own to try to create a peer-to-peer cash system.
Yeah, that would be Intercoin.
That's right. Yeah. It's a lot of my passion goes into trying to help communities have their own cryptocurrency, because I think that if we don't do this, then we're just going to live in a world where Amazon has its own currency and Facebook has its own currency. And then, of course, the state with their central banks are going to have their CBDCs, the central bank digital currencies. And so they will be controlling the money supply.
I like that you mentioned it, because this has been scaring the hell out of me since it's been starting. You already have this in a lot of ways. These companies having their own digital currencies. There's already Microsoft points. There's already premium points for this game or that game. And none of these currencies are interchangeable. You're just sinking money into these companies. EA has them. Valve, I don't think actually Valve has done it, but Nintendo has them, where you can't just buy the product with USD. No, you have to buy a certain amount of points. And let's say the game you want to buy is $5, but oh, no, look, we only sell points in $10 increments.
It's like an arcade.
It is. It's just a way of stealing from people. And then you have $3 on the Microsoft Store that you can never, ever redeem. And they basically just stole $3 from you. And it's a modern version of the company store.
I mean, this has been around for ages. They call it breakage. You know, when you go on Groupon and you get your Groupon, but then you don't use it, and you're kind of, you know, what are you going to do? And they do have Groupon Bucks, where you can sort of use it for something else, but it's not clear if you can always do that. But that's typically been the case. Half-Life and other point systems have always been around, but cryptocurrency lets you sort of maybe interoperate between them, or at least intercoin. You know, the idea is to be able to use your points from one thing in another thing. So, you know, but
turn your Microsoft Xbox points into Half-Life bucks or whatever. That was Half-Life bucks, by the way.
Oh, is that what they were called?
I don't know what they were called. I was just clarifying what it may have sounded like I had said.
Basically, I think that Bitcoin was, you know, Satoshi, whoever it is, said it was going to be a peer-to-peer cash system. But I think Satoshi was smart enough to realize, and people were telling Satoshi on the forums, that it cannot possibly handle the number of transactions that a real cash system would handle. So essentially, it would always be doomed to be a store of value. And that's what people realized, and the narrative changed. I remember around 2013, the narrative became HODL. Some guy on a forum wrote HODL because he was drunk or something, and ever since then, Bitcoin, the narrative is it's a store of value. And they gave up on the idea that it's a peer-to-peer cash system. So there's nothing. There's pretty much nothing.
Well, that's largely because the miners are the ones who determine what Bitcoin is and what it isn't, and the miners are making a whole lot of money from this. So to them...
Yeah, well, Roger Ver tried to make it Bitcoin Cash, tried to, you know, increase the block size. So there's that.
Yes, I love Bitcoin Cash.
Me too.
Exactly. Yeah, Bitcoin Cash is a lot more of a cash than Bitcoin.
Certainly.
And then they've added some things on top to make it more programmable, so that's nice. But, you know, having a blockchain definitely is a bit limiting in general, because a blockchain, well, every transaction in the world has to be collected in one place and put into a block. And it's just it's a way to solve the double spend problem. That's true. But it's very non-scalable in the sense that, well, every transaction in the world has to be in one place. and that's
Yeah.
not the way that you would expect things to go.
Considering the
Anyway.
number of cash transactions that happen every single day that are just one person handing cash to another, you're right. There's probably no digital mechanism that can handle something like that, which is why I think the goldbacks are such a good idea.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because the goldbacks can be handled in person, and there's no online digital ledger or a blockchain or anything like that. It's just one person handing value to another person.
And it has legitimate worth.
Yeah, that's what the Lightning Network and these other things, it's just peer-to-peer. The only reason you need a third-party ledger is when you want to settle the debt between people. So I guess you can improve the network by having an account. Let's say you go to the supermarket or the coffee shop, and so you say, I owe you more and more and more. And if you stop coming, they can post that to the blockchain. And that's an improvement. But it handles only that case. It handles if you have a recurring customer kind of thing.
Did you have anything else tonight, Greg?
I just wanted to say that we absolutely need a peer-to-peer cash system, in my opinion, because if we don't have something that's mainstream and is used by people and their everyday lives, then cryptocurrency will just be about assets being held in your wallet and kind of speculating on whether they'll go up and down. It won't be about economic activity so much as it will be about trading. And if it's about trading, then it will be kind of like a zero-sum game. Some person gives A for B and some person gives B for A. And that I'd like to see more. I'd like to see people actually using it in their everyday life. That's all.
Greg, thank you so much for the call tonight. You raise a very valid point that I had never really given a whole lot of consideration to, but it isn't necessary to use blockchain for every single transaction. We could just use goldbacks or silver or whatever precious metal one wanted to use that was clearly denominated in some specific amount, like 1,000th of a troy ounce or whatever. Why we always promote goldbacks so heavily is that they found a way to take 1/1000th of an ounce of gold and turn it into something that you won't immediately lose, because that's a tiny, tiny amount of gold. But certainly these things do exist, and I think they are going to have to work together to solve all of these problems instead of trying to use the USD system, which, granted, for however miraculously they managed to do it, they conceived a way for the USD to both work on massive amounts of online payments and in-person transactions. But it also fuels massive amounts of war and debt and
has no legitimate value.
No, it's backed by the full faith and credit of the United States government, which I don't know about you, but I have neither faith I don't know if I have credit with the federal government or not, but I have no faith in the United States federal government. So much so that I'm part of a group of people talking about why New Hampshire should secede from the United States and declare independence from this monstrosity that is taxing everyone and inflating their currency to the point that it's lost 97% of its value since it was created, or something like that.
Oh, gosh.
It was 95%.
I knew it was bad, but honestly, I didn't know it was that bad.
In 2008, it was 95%.
Wow.
Yeah. And it's not getting any better. And, with COVID-19 and all of they've turned the money printers on nonstop. It's only going to get worse. 603-283-6160. There's more coming up. We're going to talk about this new Alzheimer's protocol.
You can't win if you don't enter, and you actually can improve your chances of winning a prize drawing if you wrinkle up your entry blank. I'm Holland Cook from survivalspeech.com, and I speak from experience. Why this works: if they'll be spinning the drum before drawing, your entry blank will move around more than, and not adhere to, other perfectly flat entry blanks. And if they don't spin the drum and merely reach into a box full of other perfectly flat entry blanks, many of which are sticking together, yours will feel different to the person reaching in. When you win, act surprised. And if you're looking for work, this is a metaphor. For more tips on sticking out in a world where just too much blends into the blah, 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 hit survivalspeech.com. I'm Holland Cook.
Are you a cryptocurrency advocate? The Crypto Tip is the ideal outreach tool to help new people discover cryptocurrency. It's a printable business card-sized tip that you can give to service providers, preferably in addition to a good cash tip. When the server scans the QR code, it'll bring up an explanation of cryptocurrency, how to install a wallet, and allow them to claim the tip. If they don't claim the crypto, you get your tip refunded to you after a time period you specify. Plus, if they do claim the tip, you get an email alert. Create as many tips as you want at cryptotip.org. That's cryptotip.org. What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191.
Free Talk Live.
You give someone an ounce of liberty and they'll go around abusing it and harming everyone else with it.
If we legalize guns...
People will be shooting people everywhere.
Right.
If you legalize prostitution, people will be having sex on the street corners. If you legalize drugs, we'll have heroin vending machines in the streets. We've heard it all on Free Talk Live. They take it to the most absurd, illogical extremes, and you're absolutely right, Alexander. It's okay for them to have freedom.
Yeah, you can give them a gun. They won't go around shooting people. But watch out with their neighbor, because you give them a gun, they'll go around in a rampage around the city, killing everyone.
But yes, they can be trusted, and apparently the government can be trusted too, because magically, we only elect the best of the best, the cream of the crop. The bureaucrats that are administering these programs are the upper echelon of society, the most trustworthy individuals.
Oh, yeah. Sometimes when I squint, I swear I can see a halo above their heads.
Free Talk Live, 7 nights a week from 7 to 10 Eastern, live on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. Chat.lrn.fm.
Are you tired of your taxes funding endless occupations around the world? Antiwar.com is run by people who understand that wars abroad become wars at home, wars on our freedoms. Antiwar.com is dedicated to bringing you the latest in news, views, interviews, and reviews from the top movers and shakers in the anti-occupation movement. Antiwar.com has it all, from thorough foreign policy analysis to interviews with whistleblowers who used to run the military-industrial complex. Anti-war, pro-free market. That's antiwar.com.
Our Matrix server is about as free as internet chat can be. Join the existing rooms or create your own at chat.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live with Arya and Nick. You've been talking about a wide variety of things tonight, from the Doomsday variant coming out of South Africa to New Hampshire's Constitution, the right to vote. Then, what is insurrection? McCarthyism. But the big revelation for me tonight, and I just want to say it again, is that Johnson & Johnson actually acquired Pfizer in 2000. I've already forgotten the year.
2006, I think you said.
I think that was correct. It's 2006 or 2008, and if you say 6, I'm going with 6. Back in 2006, Johnson & Johnson purchased Pfizer. So that means you really only have 2 different vaccines to choose from, because both Pfizer and the Johnson & Johnson are the Johnson & Johnson vaccines. And I just am stunned that we're 18, 19 months into this, and this is the first I've heard about it. That's a big thing.
Makes me curious about who owns Moderna.
Let me know what you find out. In the meantime, let's talk to Charles, who's listening on KINA. Charles, you're on Free Talk Live.
Yes, sir. I'm listening to your show, and I guess the 30,000-foot view of everything is that, the idea is to have as close to paradise on Earth as we possibly can, right?
Well, paradise is going to mean different things for different people, but sure.
Well, let's say a world without, as few problems as possible. And the thought keeps coming back to me that it's really not possible because of the reason the founding fathers said when they set up this republic. Remember, I guess it was Benjamin Franklin. He said a lady on the street asked him, "What kind of government have you given us?" And he said, "A republic if you can keep it." And the founding fathers, Washington and John Adams and Thomas Jefferson, who, by the way, tried to free the slaves several times through legislation, notwithstanding the trashing that he's getting from the left, he actually tried to free the slaves. The founding fathers said the only way our form of government could survive is well, as John Adams put it, he said, "Our Constitution was made for a moral and religious people, and it is wholly inadequate for the government of any other." And I really think that it's not possible to achieve any kind of, or even get close to a problem-free society without God.
Well, there are always going to be problems. The goal of libertarianism is not to eliminate problems, it's to allow people to peaceably solve them through voluntary cooperation.
Okay. Well, you have this recent development that you're talking. I guess it's recent because I'm only hearing about it tonight from you about the Bitcoin situation, where you have people that are always going to, greed is going to kick in. You're going to have human nature. If it doesn't have a check on it, which is is part of the genius of the founding fathers. They set up a system that put checks on our baser inclinations, and that's why we've lasted as long as we have. Well, the three branches of government that
that have no checks on them whatsoever. Because
as far as they tried, at least. All I'm saying is that they made an effort to set up a system.
Yes, but they failed.
Well, they may because of human nature. Yeah.
So their solution didn't work.
If you have a group of if you have a group of people who disregard law and do
No. What we have, the reason. Hold on, Charles.
The founding fathers.
Yeah, I got you on hold because it's not people who disregarded the law that created the Leviathan state that we have today. It is people who exploited the law and wrote the law to expand the law and to expand the size of government to the size that it is. It's not because of anyone out there breaking the law. It's because people were writing laws and they wanted more power for themselves. They wanted more control over other people.
Well, I guess a current example would be Biden, who, so let's just get as an example, the renter, what was that? The renter moratorium that people couldn't kick people out who weren't paying their rents. Okay, Biden himself said, "I don't think this is legal, but I'm going to go ahead and do it anyway." And
the CDC under Trump was the one who implemented that, though.
Well, do you think that they were in Trump's corner?
I mean, I don't see any reason why they weren't. The head of the CDC is someone that he put there, isn't it?
Well, what I saw, I don't know what you saw. What I saw was the three-letter agencies doing everything they could to undermine the man at every turn. But I don't know, maybe you saw something different. But I think it all goes back to what they said. It's made for a moral and religious people, and when we're not that, then it ain't going to work.
It's not a failure of the people that this didn't work, though. It's a failure of the politicians.
Yeah, and who elects those people?
I mean, nowadays it's hard to say. I certainly didn't.
Well, that's for sure.
and even back then it was hard to say because women weren't allowed to vote until the 20th century.
Well, you know, there is something to say, though, don't you think, for people only being allowed to vote who have a stake. I'm not necessarily talking about women, but it used to be that only landowners or property owners could vote. And I think that was really made sense because you had people who had a stake in the situation able to vote.
Anyone who lives here has a stake in the situation.
Well, I don't know who it was, but
okay, hold on. Address my point before you move on. How can someone live here and not have a stake in it?
I'm trying to address your point.
Okay.
One of the founding fathers, I forgot who it was, said, when the populace figure out that they can vote themselves largesse from the treasury, it's over. When you have people who,
how much of the percentage of land in the United States is owned by the federal government?
Probably a huge, I don't know.
Because it's a huge portion of it.
Yeah. Lately, it's grown and grown. Absolutely.
Yeah, so again, the problem isn't the people, it's the federal government. They're the ones with the money. They're the ones with the wealth. They're the ones with the land. They're also the ones with the guns.
Well, they're not the way. Well, who elected those people?
Not me.
Again, I didn't. And as far as I can tell, the average American didn't either because the average American doesn't vote.
And
well,
I mean,
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So even if people are voting, if you vote for the person that loses, you still lose. So people are still under dictatorship from people that they did not vote into office. I didn't vote a single one of these people into office.
Yeah,
yet they think they have control over my life. Something
like 70 million people voted for Donald Trump, and that means that about 70 million people, I don't know exactly the numbers, voted for Joe Biden, and that's not even a fourth of the population. Not even 25% of the population voted for the current president.
Well, then, and wouldn't you say some of the fault falls on those who didn't vote? And I don't believe
they have no obligation to take part in a system that they want nothing to do with. The fault isn't on the hands of the people who didn't vote. The fault is on the hands of people who did vote, who did legitimize this monstrous system.
Well, I listened to all the committee, a lot of the committee hearings, and I saw the evidence, and the colonel who was a cybersecurity expert, testified for Mike Lindell. And this election, there was a lot more than 70 million people that voted for Donald Trump. And
Charles, you're sitting here blaming the voters while you're alleging that there was widespread voter fraud. So who elected these people? Clearly the machines did.
Yeah, China.
So what responsibility does the average American have for this? You keep saying who elected these people? The machines.
It's not something that happens on a dime. It's a progression of events over years and years of propaganda and influence from various quarters. I don't know what you've done in your life. I can tell you that in my experience, I've seen it's godlessness is what's the problem is. It's godlessness.
Charles, I wish I could carry this conversation on with you, being the resident Satanist of the show. Unfortunately, we're out of time for tonight. I will say that you keep pointing to, the founding system that clearly didn't work. You keep blaming Americans and a system that has widespread voter fraud that you say happened. And I don't know. I tend to think you're on the verge of a revelation there. You just have to stick with it a little bit further. But we're out of time for tonight. So check us out in the meantime over at freetalklive.com.
Are you tired of governments murdering people around the world? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless, free market, non-political currency. Bitcoin cannot be inflated or controlled by any government.